It does. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to call this regular school board meeting to order on Tuesday, December 19th. Will you please call the roll? Member Harla.
I will for my last meeting. All right. I am here. Member Johnston. Here. Chair Kirby.
Here.
Member Leffler-Kemp.
Here.
Member Oswald.
Here.
Member Sandstead.
Here.
Member Welty. Here. Superintendent Gronseth.
Here.
Deputy Clerk Hassler. Here. Secretary Dolans. Here. Student Representative Emmel. Here. Student Representative Francis. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So now we're through with that. Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Member Harla and seconded by Member Sandstead. Any discussion? Member Welty.
Yes, just to be on the safe side, we have a consideration of budget reductions, which we have talked about in emails, and I would recommend, actually I move that we add it to the agenda so that there can be no doubt about whether we are properly engaged in discussing it and making decisions related to it.
I believe it comes up in the business committee, no? Member Superintendent.
During the committees, it was discussed in the HR committee under the resolutions. And so it could be under that, or it could be added to the business agenda if you'd prefer it to be there.
To me, is there a second to you? Are you making that motion? Okay.
Who gets the second?
Give it to Member Oswald. All right, so it's been moved and seconded that we add that to the
Business committee?
Business committee meeting. Business committee report. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor of making or approving Member Welty's
Addition
to the agenda of the business meeting. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then that is approved. Then it's been moved and seconded to approve the remainder of the agenda. Is there any discussion on this?
Where would you like?
Doesn't matter. We'll go there. Seeing none, all in favor of approving the rest of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then that is approved unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have school and community recognition. Do you want to meet me down in front?
Well, the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I crossed that off without doing it. So nobody better make any additions.
It must be December.
Right. Are there any additions or subtractions, or would someone like to motion to approve the minutes of the regular school board meeting of November 21st? It's been moved by Member Sandstead, seconded by Member Welty. Any discussion on this? None. All in favor of approving those minutes of November 21st, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And they are approved unanimously. And secondly, the minutes of the special school board meeting of November 28th. Is there a motion to approve these as written? It's been moved and seconded, moved by Member Leffler-Kemp, seconded by Member Welty to approve those minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And they are approved as written. Thank you. Now we have school and community recognition. Is that on?
Good evening. Members of the board, tonight I am pleased to present Edie Howes for recognition. Is she here with us tonight? There she is. Edie is our coordinator for our Department of American Indian Education. Under her leadership, the department has helped to develop the Masabikang Ojibwe Language Immersion Program at Lowell Elementary and has supported Masabikang's curriculum retreats. The department helped organize American Indian Day at Ordine East Middle School and partnered with Myers-Wilkins and Piedmont Elementary Schools to host powwows for students, staff, and families. Her department partnered with Denfeld High School to host the Community Round Dance and worked to provide Ojibwe, shoulder bag, and history activities for all students at Lester Park, Stowe, Lincoln Park Middle School, Lowell, and Myers-Wilkins. These are only a few of many ways that Edie Howes has led her department within Duluth Public Schools. We were pleased to hear that the Minnesota Indian Education Association presented Edie with their 2017 Administrator of the Year award at their annual conference this fall. The award recognizes her leadership, her work in the American Indian education community, the reflection of American Indian culture in her life and work, and her many achievements. Thank you, Edie, for all that you do to educate, teach, and inspire young Duluth learners and all of us every day. Congratulations.
Could do.
Pointer and then right left, yeah.
Just so you know what's going on, we're going to have our Truth and Taxation hearing, and so we'll be sitting down in front, and it will be shown up on the board.
I'll wait till you sit down. It's my honor to lead the presentation on the Truth in Taxation presentation tonight related to the public hearing for taxes that are payable in 2018. This process really goes back to the Minnesota Constitution, which provides for the establishment of a uniform system of public schools, which is the duty of the legislature to establish a general and uniform system of public schools, with the legislature to make provisions by taxation or otherwise, as will secure a thorough and efficient system of public schools throughout the state. So, though it's not highlighted, taxation is embedded in our state constitution as a funding support for public schools. The annual process that we go through in establishing a certified levy begins in the month of September, and beginning in the month of September, the Minnesota Department of Education does calculations and distributes calculations for every individual school district in the state of levy limitation worksheets that establish the maximum authorized levy under Minnesota statute. The board will recall that in the month of September, we made recommendation to approve a proposed certified levy in the month of September that was based on the maximum allowable. That action has taken place, but that's not the end of the process. So reference there to September 19th, where the school board did approve the maximum proposed levy. In the month of November, the county mailed proposed property tax statements to all property owners that reflected the proposed tax levies for all of the overlapping taxing units that every property owner pays property taxes towards. Tonight is the public hearing on proposed levy at a regular school board meeting. This is a required public hearing under Minnesota statute. And in the agenda tonight, an agenda item will provide for the certification of final levy amounts. Just a little review of some historical revenue and expenditure information. Lots of numbers on this page. I would reference the fiscal 2017 beginning fund balances, which totaled $61,515,003. The June 30, 2017 actual fund balances are reflected as well. Certainly a function of the FY17 revenue and expenditure. I will point out a rather substantial decline, which the board is aware of in our general fund. This was something that was highlighted in our business committee meeting this month with the presentation of the audit of FY17. And we're also projecting forward to the end of the last column really should reflect June 30, 2018 projected fund balance, and at that point we are projecting the potential for a negative fund balance in our general fund and other assorted balances in our other funds. When you look across our organization as a whole, in terms of revenue, you will see that the revenue, that our largest fund in terms of the revenue that comes in is certainly our general fund. After general fund, we have a sizable amount of revenue wrapped into our debt fund, community service, food service, and so on in declining shares, all totaling $142,942,000. We looked at the revenue side, and now we'll look at the expenditure side. This pie chart is a representation of all the expenses in our various funds, including our general fund, totaling a little bit over $105 million, and this is based on the approved budget for FY18. The other funds are represented there as well, including debt service, community service, food service, and so on. While looking at our organization as a whole is an important thing to do, we've been spending a lot of time in recent weeks and months focusing in on our operating fund. And another word for that would be our combined general fund. And as you look into our combined general fund, this is a pie chart representing the expenditures by program. The largest commitment of expenditures within our operating fund is not surprisingly related to regular instruction, representing 39%, special education representing 20%, site building and equipment at 15.3%, transportation at 6.2%, and other various expenditure areas in declining shares. In terms of a levy analysis, I wanted to share with you kind of where we were with our certified levy in 2017. The maximum levy limitation available to us in the next column over, totaling $31,697,000, and then recommendations. And the recommendation that I'm making to you tonight is to adopt the maximum levy in each of the identified funds, which break down to the general fund, community services fund, and our debt redemption fund. When you you can compare the recommended levy for 2018 to the certified levy for 2017, and you see some increase in general fund, relatively small increase in our community services fund, and a larger decrease and an offsetting decrease in our debt fund. When you add it all up in terms of our total recommended levy, the district-wide total recommended levy is actually $118,000 less in 2018 compared to the certified levy for 2017. There are many state formulas that account for multiple levies that are part of our general fund. Not so many with community service, and also not so many in debt service, but it's really not accurate to say that all of our levies are going up or all of our levies are going down. Some are going up, some are going down. In terms of highlights, the proposed 2018 levy would include an increase for long-term facilities maintenance, LTFM, of $750,000, a relatively modest increase for other post-employment benefits, and a number of reductions. Reemployment insurance, a more sizable decrease in our debt service. The decrease in our debt service is largely attributable to refundings that this board has undertaken back in 2015 and 2016, and those refundings have reduced our debt service costs with a continuing effect into the 2018 levy. Decrease in our operating capital, referendum adjustment. We have a referendum going back to 2013, and that referendum includes both a levy component and a state equalization component. So this is represented as a $344,000 decrease on our levy. What that really relates to is there's a shifting back and forth between state support for the referendum and also the local levy. So that reduction is not reflective of a decrease in our total referendum revenue. It's relating to the levy side of it, and there would be a compensating increase on the state support side, also a decrease in the student achievement. With the exception of debt service, maybe the reemployment insurance as well, with the exception of those two, most everything else on here is really a function of a unique state calculation that oftentimes will factor in student enrollment and some other factors, and those calculations are largely outside of our direct control. They just flow through based on, in most cases, enrollment being the primary consideration. Representation here of estimated tax impact, looking at both residential homestead and commercial properties. For the sake of an example, valued at $150,000, with the annual change and the property tax liability for a residential homestead owner of $1.66 less of a property tax payment relating to our levies. In 18, a commercial property owner would have a somewhat more substantial decrease there. Oftentimes, it is the case that a property owner will see, even if even if our proposed levy is falling, that they might see a greater tax liability on their property tax bill. And that's possible, unrelated to what's happening with our levies, because there may be other taxing units that are having some increases that are more substantial than our decreases. And the other factor is, on a year-to-year basis, property values may fluctuate. So a property value may go up, and even with a lesser tax rate, would have a greater cost. In summary, the recommendation that I'm making to the board is to approve a levy that would provide for a decrease of $118,236 or 0.4%. With this decreased levy and the expectation of a continued growth, which we have seen in our local tax base, we would anticipate that the school tax rate reduction will exceed that 0.4%. Prior legislative action to implement local optional revenue does not actually represent an increase in our tax levy, but rather shifts dollars between what is categorized as voter approved to other, despite the November 2013 referendum results. And that concludes my presentation for the Truth in Taxation hearing. Be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. I can wait.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Hassler. One question, and a lot on our minds right now, is our current budget and our ability to levy. And I'm seeing a decrease, which surprises me. So are we levying to the max of our capability? I just want to make sure that in past years we've been conservative and gone less. I just want to make sure that we are levying to the full breadth of our authority.
We are levying to our maximum. The reason you're seeing a decrease in our total levy is a function of a decrease of nearly $300,000 in our debt service levy, which is really not relevant to our operating costs. It's relevant to us making full and timely payment of our debt obligations, which we will do so. If you break things down, one of my slides did show that within the general fund, the levy is increasing. Now, in the scope of our budget, it's not increasing a lot. It's proposed to increase about $140,000. But your basic question is, are we levying the maximum that is allowable to us? Yes, we are.
I just have a follow-up to that. And that's different than other bodies of government. So the city and the county can levy a lot for the, so what I want to make clear to the public is that oftentimes people say, well, why don't you just raise the taxes for schools and XYZ? Like the city is able to, or the county is able to. We don't have the same type of authority to levy in that way.
That's very true. We all play by the set of, we play by a unique set of rules established under Minnesota law. And there's a lot of variety. I mean, just in terms of the number that I shared with you in terms of a levy increase of $140,000 in our general fund, there's all kinds of things going on there. There's probably a half a dozen different levies that are going into that, and some of those levies are decreasing because there's a state formula that has that decreasing. Other formulas are increasing, and what we see is the net of it. But the authority that we have as a school district is the authority that the state of Minnesota gives us, and other authorization exists for other taxing units that are different from our own.
Thank you for clarification.
You're welcome.
No other comments? Questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there another one down there? Is that the only one? All right. Thank you. Next on our agenda is audience participation. Our first speaker tonight is Bernie Burnham. Oh, there you are. Is that up?
Well, good evening. I am going to start, in spite of the week that we've had, I'm going to start by saying that I am still proud to work for ISD 709. I'm pleased to be here. As you know, I'm a lifelong resident of Duluth for the most part, and I went to school here and raised my children here, teach in this district, lead our teachers, work with all of our staff on a daily basis. So I'm going to say that loud and clear. I am proud to be here. All right? I'm thankful at the moment that the crisis that we've been dealing with over the last week has been averted. And while we know it's been averted right now, it's a temporary thing. I want to know how we work together collectively as we move forward so we're not facing this every single year and putting people through the emotions that I have witnessed, not only this year, but in years past. So I've got some brief comments in the last week. And I'm going to start again by saying, trust me, I know how difficult it is to message and get your message across clearly and try not to offend people. I do it all the time. But I can tell you this is what I know. Over the last few days, I've heard it over and over again, saying to people that they should voluntarily give up 2 days of salary to show they care. We're all here for a reason. Our staff cares. Many folks, and not just teachers, let me know that they were offended. They felt like it made the choice to not give up 2 days of salary. If they made that choice, they'd be looked upon as someone who doesn't care. It truly pit folks against one another, intentional or not. For every single person in this organization, giving away 2 days of pay means something different. It's not just the salary. It plays into FTE. It plays into retirement, it plays into severance, and much more. For some of our folks, and I'm not just talking about teachers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about everybody, it might be a student loan payment. It might be a mortgage payment. It plays into groceries and gas and much more. We have people at all levels of life that work for our organization in all different circumstances. So as you look out into the audience tonight, I really want our Duluth community to understand that we care about our students, that we care about one another, that we care about our community, and that we will always work to protect our collectively bargained agreement as long as we can by the statute of the law. To be questioned to change that is insulting. I would ask, on that note, that we get our remaining units to settled contracts. They deserve it. They work hard alongside us every day. So I'll be brief, as I usually am. On that note, I'm going to thank those of you who are leaving us tonight that have served on the board for the last 4 years. We appreciate your service. Whether we always agree on things or not, we know that's a given, but I know it's not easy work, but you are appreciated. And I wish everybody in the room a Merry Christmas, and I hope we all get a chance to breathe and rest over break, for many of us to get healthy again, and to just, appreciate each other every day. I've been out to concerts over the last couple of weeks, and I wish I could get to more, but there's nothing better than listen to little kids sing, and to hear the music, and to watch the energy. I was at Conga today, and there was a little girl in 2nd grade that, oh my goodness, she just was so full of energy and amazing and really, really fun to watch. So, I think we need to do more of that, appreciating each other. I appreciate you all, and I thank you for the work that you do every day.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next is Dennis Fraser. Welcome. Thank you.
My name is Dennis Fraser. I'm president of AFSCME Local 66. And thank you for this opportunity that we can meet tonight and discuss about the welfare and benefit of our children in our school. There are some points I wish to bring up tonight that I've learned about. For the past 6 months, there's been a contract expiration for the paraprofessionals that work for this school district. Food service workers have no date in sight. These workers deserve more respect. It is my opinion, as president of Local 66, the district is attempting to circumvent collective bargaining rights to workers. This is a human right violation. The long-term solution, people have asked me what's the solution. The solution is in the process, my brothers and sisters. It is to negotiate with the workers in good faith through the union that exists. This is not Wisconsin. We still respect workers in the great state of Minnesota. Workers, be it AFSCME, be it the teachers, no matter what their job is they do in any bargaining unit, keep our schools running in a dignified and respectful manner no matter what their job is. We need to respect all workers so our students have a better life. In my day job, I'm a child protection social worker for St. Louis County since 1985, and yes, I've done investigations in the Duluth School District. You depend on all workers in the district to gather the information you need to keep children safe and help families get to a better place, especially with the challenges they face today. These workers help do that. Let us remember, we are all brothers and sisters with different mothers and fathers. Let us move forward by being respectful to all workers, by respecting collective bargaining rights. We all need to look back to history for the solutions of the present. President Lincoln said, "All that harms workers and labor is treason to America." And with most workers in the bargaining units represented by AFSCME, they're part-time workers, and it has been said, any worker that works part-time is in reality working part-time, but they're really working full-time in reality for very part-time wages. With this, I thank you for your time and consideration. Let's go forward for a solution to make lives better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Ann Wasson.
Good evening. Chair Kirby, Superintendent Gronseth, school board members, my name is Ann Wasson, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. First of all, I'd like to thank the incoming board members for taking on the role of this public school advocate. We appreciate you all already. I hope you will advocate for all children in our district and let our leaders lead. Good luck to you all. A special thank you to Member Harla for her time, effort, and commitment to all students and families in ISD 709. You have been a strong, reasonable voice and a prepared and caring board member. Many of us hope we will see you again on this board one day. You will be missed. Thank you for your dedication and to the education of our kids. To the new board, thank you for helping move the district forward, and I wish you all well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Maddie Wagoner.
Good evening. For the last 4 months, I've been working on the Zeitgeist Places for People campaign in the Hillside neighborhood. Our goal as an organization is to grow and sustain a connected, healthy community empowered to create and thrive. The Places for People campaign acts as a community consultant talking with neighbors in the Hillside about how to improve their neighborhood. We've been talking with neighbors to discuss the upcoming construction project, now scheduled for summer 2018 on East 9th Street. The project will span from 6th Avenue East to Woodland. Myers-Wilkins Elementary School is just 1 block up from 9th Street. Because of current safety concerns, though, East 9th Street has been identified by the school district as a safety hazard, therefore qualifying students as close as 2 blocks away for bus service. Children that close to school should be able to reap the benefits of walking and biking to school without having to worry about their safety. East 9th Street is also identified in the Safe Routes to School plan as a designated walking and biking route, and the plan also recommends infrastructure safety improvements. This scheduled project is only resurfacing, so it will be done pretty quickly, and we've been talking with neighborhood residents to see what sort of improvements they'd like to see happen on the street regarding the design. Since August, we've knocked on 729 doors on East 9th Street, and we've had 158 conversations with residents, so just over 1 in 5 people were answering their doors and wanting to talk with us. A few results from our door knocking surveys. 79% of neighbors we talked to said they felt there were visual barriers on 9th Street, making it difficult to see as both pedestrians and drivers. And about 60% of neighbors we talked to said they thought it was scary to bike in traffic on East 9th Street. After talking with neighbors, it was obvious they had concerns about safety, especially for children who walk and bike to Myers-Wilkins Elementary School. When we asked neighbors about what solutions they thought were needed to improve safety, 75% said they'd like to see a curb extension next to the avenue of Myers-Wilkins to improve safety for students crossing the street to school, and 72% said they'd like to see bike lanes on East 9th Street. Additionally, when asked if they'd support the removal of parking from one side to put in a protected bike lane, more than 2 out of 3 neighbors agreed. This included drivers who just wanted bikers in a safe space, who didn't bike themselves. As I listen to neighbors talk about their experiences and share stories of being hit by cars and near misses, it has become clear to me that people do want to walk and bike for both recreation and even out of necessity. We need to make our streets safer in order for people to utilize their neighborhood roads. No parent should have to worry their child will be in danger every time they want to walk or bike to school. So for this project, there's neighborhood input, studies of street design best practice, and safe route school plan, all in support of improving the functionality and safety of East 9th Street. I strongly urge all school board members to email the city's engineering and planning departments, sharing their support for improved street design to ensure everyone, not just drivers, can get to school and work safely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robin Davidson. Welcome.
Good evening, board members, superintendent. I'm Robin Davidson, and I am a parent and also a member of the community-based school equity initiative. It was a year ago that we came to express concerns over educational equity, west and east. We were prompted by online petitions started by parents of East-based students who recognize glaring differences in access to classes. Since that time, our focus has expanded and deepened. We began with the process of public meetings and data collection. From this information, we identified 11 areas that called for attention. These areas impact East and West, as well as elementary, middle, and high schools. In hopes of being part of the solution, we also generated both short-term and longer-term strategies to address those needs. Recently, the topic that has received the most attention is compensatory education funding. There are members of this board who have been strong advocates for revisions to the distribution formula. These revisions will strengthen the district's ability to address the achievement gap. We are hopeful that a resolution to begin fulfilling the promise of realignment of comp ed money with the buildings that generate it will be forthcoming in the new year. In the future, we remain committed to working with community partners, the school board, and within district administration. Our hope is that through cooperative efforts, we will identify and address the most pressing issues that contribute to educational inequity. We recognize that budgets are very tight. This reality highlights the importance of targeting our resources where there is greatest need. The choices are never easy. With clarity as to our shared commitment and responsibility to educational equity, we believe that we can make progress even in these challenging times. We appreciate the work that you do and thank you for your time and attention to the needs of all students.
Thank you very much. Next is Marcia Stromgren. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Marcy Stromgren, and I'm a resident, have been all my life in the Duluth area. Grew up in the Duluth public schools. As I came down the hill to come to this meeting tonight, I went past Nettleton, which is all closed and boarded up. And I thought about some of the failed promises that the Red Plan has brought to our district. Now we see we're asking employees to take 2 days without pay. I wonder what's next. I got a terrible increase in my taxes in 2017 with a brand new business, 333% increase in 1 year for the Red Plan. So I started company meetings, it's about 9.5 years ago now. But I didn't come here to rehash all of that. I came here to thank a couple of very special people who will no longer be on the board. I want to thank Harry Welty and Art Johnston for the hard work that they've tried to allow people to understand what was really going on here. I want to thank them for their fortitude. It must be kind of gut-wrenching to be kept out of the process, but when 3 people finally got on the board, their voices started being heard. Now we see them leave, and so their voices are going to be no longer heard. Too bad for the district. Sorry to see you go, but I really appreciate your hard work. I appreciate the fact that Art Johnston had to go through a lawsuit. I felt that was terribly uncivilized. And yet he gets to pay the indebtedness that cost him to get a federal judge to say, you don't have a leg to stand on, school district, but he still has to pay the bill. So I wish him and Harry well as they go out into the community and no longer serve our district, but I do want to really thank them from the bottom of my heart for the hard work that they put in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Barb Welcome.
Good evening. Welcome. My name is Barb Welcome. I'm here tonight to give a huge thank you to Harry Welty and Art Johnston for all they've done for this district, for supporting us taxpaying citizens, trying to get the truth out. I thank you for your support for equity for all students across the district, with you and both of you and Member Oswald calling the special meeting to try to keep the compensatory education funding in the schools and generate them. Sadly, it was voted down. Some of the new members that will be seated have promised that they want equity for all students across the district, and I certainly hope that they really meant that, and it's going to happen. The DNT recently published 2 articles about the financial straits the district is in. 2 reasons given were declining enrollments and the increase in special education cost for the Edison Charter School, and they answered that in the paper today. One fact that was never mentioned is the $3.3 million payment on the Red Plan debt fund that was transferred from the general fund, which funds all the staff, the teachers, and the programs. It's taken out every year. It was the way the Red Plan was set up to be paid. It would be paid this portion that came out of the general fund was to be paid by the sale of the schools, the savings on the different electrical and heating costs, and it hasn't happened. Last year, $3.3 million came out of the general fund that funds teachers and programs, and you're asking these teachers to give up money when $3.3 million is coming out of their fund to pay for the Red Plan debt. Since 2010, $37.6 million has been transferred from the general fund to pay off the Red Plan debt. These transfers will continue until 2033. Perhaps there is some way to change the funding and quit taking it out of the general fund. Again, I want to thank Art and Harry for their excellent work. I know it's been tough, and I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Beth Kirsting-Peterson. Welcome.
Thank you. As you said, my name is Elizabeth Kirsting-Peterson. I stand here as a proud teacher this evening for this district for 31 years. We are here tonight, I am here tonight, because we are the center of gravity for some of our families. Because we care more than others think is wise. Because we risk more than others think is safe. We create more than others envision. We give more than others think is sensible. We expect more than others think is possible. And we dream more than others think is practical. Because we are great teachers. And the financial issues of this district are not a result of anything we have done. We continue to do more with less because we care. We care about our community. We care about our students, and we care about each other.
I want to thank everybody who came and took time to speak tonight, but there are no other speakers listed. Next is reading communications.
And I don't believe there are any. Nope.
Okay. Then we'll go to the report of the superintendent.
Yes, thank you. As Bernie mentioned, there have been programs and events all over the district, and there's a few more left in the coming days, and it's really an opportunity for our students to show what they've learned in their music classes and their art classes, and it's always exciting for them to have people come and watch them and to participate in those shows. So we really appreciate all of the efforts that go into creating those events, all of the people who work to not only teach the kids, but also to set up chairs and clean up afterwards and make sure that the students are creating art to put up. And you know, when you go to the programs and you see the artwork on the hall, or on the walls rather, it's sometimes easy to say, oh wow, it's a really pretty decoration, but if you really look at what they've created, they're demonstrating the standards that they've learned in art. So take a closer look at those when you're out at the programs. I also want to thank our CTE partners who recently donated winter construction gear to our construction program. They have been diligently working on building a house with our partners at Lake Superior College, and now they can be warm as they're out on a scaffolding in winter weather. So we thank our partners for providing that. I also want to talk about the budget and the process that we've gone through. And, we have had considerable budgetary concerns to address, and I've really been heartened by the collaboration and the conversation and the ideas that have been shared by many groups that have come together. And while we have been doing this, there have been several items that we have been considering, and we've been working to develop all of them at once. And because we're on a short timeline, things get a little messy, for lack of other words, because we're trying to develop a bunch of ideas all at once. Some of them come forward as great ideas, and we pursue them, and others not so much. So the leave of absence was certainly one that came up in a lot of our meetings. It was recommendations or suggestions that came up in a number of settings, and so we pursued it. And when the forum went out, more questions came out. And they were really good questions. And we realized that there were a lot of different variables at play, and we didn't have time to really work through all of those variables given our tight timeline. And so we did let that go as one of the options, but we have continued to work on a plan that the board will hear tonight that was added to the business committee. So they'll be hearing more about that plan later on in the agenda. At this time, I really want to spend some time focusing on our student school board representatives. This is their final meeting as school board reps, and it has been a wonderful year with them, and we'll have them give their reports, and then we have a little parting gift for you to remember your time on the board. So who wants to go first this month? All right, Cabria, why don't we start with you?
All right. So, I don't know. Is that it? I'll scoot closer. Okay. This month I conducted another student forum meeting, and this month, instead of talking about policies and issues in the school, as a collective, we got to make holiday cards for teachers that I'll be passing on Friday. This morning, my mom, who is in the crowd right now, hi, Mom, we went to a meeting with the counselors and met with the counselors and a specialist from UMD, Carl Huber, about filling out the FAFSA financial aid application. We had a great time and we learned a lot. I'd like to thank our counselors for providing the students at East this opportunity and also all the work they do for us. This week at East, we are celebrating Holiday Week with dress-up days. Today was Flannel Day, and tomorrow is Winter Whiteout. Tomorrow, the exec board will host a free hot chocolate giveaway in the morning, and then the exec board on Friday will put on an extended assembly showcasing the winter sports and activities. Almost all winter sports and activities are underway, including basketball, speech, boys swimming, Nordic skiing, and hockey. And speaking of hockey, the hockey team is championing a holiday food drive at their game next Thursday at the Heritage during the Perkins Hockey Frenzy. So I'd invite all of you to that. And then a couple congratulatory things. Tim Huxema is going to state for debate, so we'd like to extend congratulations to him and good luck. And then the holiday concert was a success. There were a couple of school board members there. Thank you for coming out. And then finally, I'd like to thank the school board for the opportunity this year to have me on the board. I'd like to thank my parents and my family members for supporting me in this and in everything. And I'd like to thank everyone who helped me get here. I'm excited to see what my successor, Finn White, will do on the board and for the school. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it exceeded my expectations. And I'm just very thankful for everyone that helped me get here and supported me here. Sorry. Thank you.
would first like to say that I hope everyone is having a wonderful holiday season, and that I know even though right now we're in a little bit of a crisis, there is still much to be thankful for. All of our friends and family and fellow coworkers are all here for one another. And I would also like to say that winter sports are in full swing. The hockey team and boys basketball are off to good starts, and I would like to personally invite each and every one of you to come to the Denfeld versus East rivalry basketball game this Thursday at 7:15 p.m. at Denfeld High School. So I hope to see you all there. Link Crew had another event for freshmen this month. We had a movie night was held in the lecture hall, where Link leaders and freshmen watched the Christmas movie Home Alone, ate popcorn and candy, and had a great time. Also, the Respect Retreat went well for Denfeld's Link Crew and freshmen, and small group discussions were successful and meaningful. And lastly, for Link Crew, Cocoa and Cram is coming up after the holiday break to prepare for finals. And several of Denfeld's organizations and clubs have been in the festive holiday giving mood. Denfeld student government adopted 2 families this holiday season and will be bringing wrapped presents to the families' homes this week. Also, Denfeld's annual food drive, I mentioned it last month, but we raised around 1,500 pounds of non-perishable food items for CHUM this holiday season. And Denfeld's National Honor Society, some National Honor Society members volunteered at the Damiano Center roughly the first 3 weekends in December. I went to one of those, and it was just a lot of fun being able to prepare the food and serve the food. Denfeld's Key Club held a hygiene drive, a little competition between the third-hour classes to gather items for those in need, for those who need it. And also, I know that Denfeld's boys hockey team also adopted a family this holiday season. And Maroon 16, one of Denfeld's well-known choirs, went caroling throughout the community as well and performed several gigs at numerous locations. And Denfeld's toy drive has been a success this year too. The big box in the front main office is almost filled to the brim with toys. And this past Monday, Denfeld's music department performed their annual holiday concert, and I was able to attend the event, and I was extremely impressed with the incredible amount of musical talent that is at Denfeld. And Denfeld's student government, Key Club members, and NHS members decorated Denfeld this past Friday in holiday colors and posters. And this week, Denfeld, similar to East, is also having a mini holiday spirit week, where Monday was Bah Humbug Day, where you'd show up in gray and black clothing, and just, Mondays are hard to get up and go to school. Today was pajama and blanket day, and so I saw a lot of blankets and a lot of onesie pajamas throughout the school. Tomorrow is Ugly Sweater Wednesday, Thursday is Holiday Character Day, and Friday is Holiday Color Day. And Mrs. Scaniers also informed me that several Denfeld students and staff participated in a Kwanzaa celebration at Lake Superior College. And I am looking forward to the holiday break, as I am sure all of my fellow classmates are as well. And I know that this is my last school board report, and I would like to close by thanking my graduating senior class of 2018 and the Denfeld staff for giving me this opportunity to grow as an individual and to represent Denfeld to the best of my abilities. I would also like to thank the school board members for being so welcoming and kind and giving me this experience I'll never forget. This position has given me insight into how decisions are made regarding our schools and how in the future I can make a difference in my community. It has been an amazing experience being part of the school board, and I am sad to leave, but it is an experience I will never forget, and I know that the next school board representative for Denfeld, Maggie Carlos, will do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have a couple of presents for you and plaques.
We do. Ben and Cabria, your reports have been amazing all year long, and we're going to miss Ben's sense of humor in his report as well. And we have certificates for each of you and small gift, actually a description of a small gift because it didn't come in time, and a lovely bag. Thank you. So, thank you so much. It really is wonderful to have your voices here, and you have both done a great deal in bringing other voices to the board as well. So thank you for your representation of your schools. I also want to take this opportunity to wish all of you a season of peace and a season of laughter, and one filled with love, and again, as Bernie said, a chance to breathe, to get healthy. Know that I too care. I've had opportunities to be in the schools quite a bit, and every time I enter a school, I see someone who I've known all my life, or I've known someone who I worked next to 20 years ago, or who I went to college with, or spent time with in the community. And I know that you care. I know that you care about your students. I know that you care about each other. It hasn't been that long since I was in the classroom next to you. I know that what you do for our kids and what you do for our community, and I appreciate you, and I wish you a very happy holiday.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we'll go to the report of the standing committees, and the first one is education. Member Lefler-Kemp.
Thank you. Just a special thanks again, Cabria and Ben. It's been great to be sitting beside you and mentoring you and hearing your questions and seeing your confidence in the last year here as student reps on the board. So again, thank you. I'm reporting from the Education Committee, which was held on December 12th. And so I begin by just moving the December 12th education report. And I would just add, being we have a lot of folks in the audience, the Education Committee and the HR and the Business Committee is all held the week before our regular scheduled board meeting. They're public meetings, they're open meetings. We encourage people to come. The Education Committee, we always have a number of informational presentations, and so there's a lot to learn there. All of the committee meetings are also on video, so you can see them that way as well, but I do welcome people to come to our committee meetings and hear the discussions as well as the informational items. So every month we start with Assistant Superintendent Amy Starzecki's report, and her report is highlighted in writing in our board book. I particularly, we got a lot of updates on the work that she has been doing with supporting, training, and working with our principals and the leadership teams within our schools. And so just really appreciated the variety of updates that you gave to us this month on your work there. She did share a quote that I think is a great quote, and I just want to read that as part of her report. Leadership is second only to classroom instruction among all school-related factors that contribute to what students learn at school. And so I do thank our principals across our district for the leadership that they provide to our staff, to our parents, to our district, and appreciate the variety of ways that our superintendent has been working with them this past year. The second informational presentation we had was from two schools dealing with the record of continuous improvement presentations. And again, these are the school improvement plans that each school puts together with a team, their continuous improvement team, which is a team of staff from the school. and they go through a comprehensive needs assessment. They develop action steps all around improving student outcome and school climate. And this month, we had Lowell Elementary School and Lester Park Elementary School, a team of staff present. And I know I find it helpful, I think all of the board does, to just have get a better sense of each school, different funding that happens and different funding and supports from each school. It's helped us understand school populations better. The data, particularly around reading and math, the challenges as well as the celebrations that each school leadership team has reviewed and is presenting. So we really appreciate it. Again, Lowell Elementary and Lester Park Elementary School presenting this month. And again, we'll have 2 schools every month present at the Education Committee. The second informational presentation was our advisory committee update. This is something we started last month. We have a number of advisory committees that help inform us and provide support and feedback for our work as a district. This month we heard from Edie House, who was recognized earlier tonight. She is our American Indian Education Coordinator, and she brought with her parents and a student rep that make up the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. They presented on kind of their role as a committee and the 3 different funds that they receive at the state and federal level and the different advisory committees that go with that fund. It was just really great to have the parent representatives here at our education committee, and I think from the board I can say we really appreciate not only them providing us feedback, the time and the commitment they put in their different roles with their advisory committees, and we look forward to continuing to have their involvement. The next area on our agenda is our regular grant applications, and this month we have a couple grant applications with the Northland Foundation. Jennifer Giles, who's one of our early childhood family education staff, submitted a grant of $5,000 to the Northland Foundation. If awarded, funds will be used to mentor and train child care providers to educate young children while in their care. This training would be done by one of our district staff, and it would be a 6-week class. And so it's recommended that the Duluth School Board receive this item as informational. The second grant application was by Haley Carlson, one of our Lincoln Park Middle School staff, a grant of $182, and if awarded, funds would be used to purchase yoga mats for the classroom to accommodate more students with flexible seating. And the D&T did a great article on the growing trend for flexible seating. So it's recommended that the Duluth School Board receive this item as informational. The next item on the educational agenda is grant partnerships with the Duluth Public Schools, and we have one this month. Nathan Glokey, who's a Stowe Elementary School principal, submitted a grant to U.S. Bank in the amount of $50,000. Funds would be used to develop Phase 2 of the Gary New Duluth Developmental Alliance Plan, which would involve a sports court, and it's a partnership with the City of Duluth. It actually would be on the City of Duluth property, and it would not be a long-term financial commitment on behalf of the Duluth Public Schools, but a partnership. We appreciate the leadership of all of our staff who were involved with writing those grants. The next item on our agenda is action items. And every year we, as a board, are presented with the calendar for the following year. Assistant Superintendent Amy Starzecki presented the recommended calendar for 2018-19. This calendar was created with a district-wide committee and going in front of getting feedback from the Quality Steering Committee and other stakeholders. So it's recommended that the Duluth School Board accept and approve the recommended calendar for 2018-2019. There were really no major changes. Some changes to when staff development days were happening was the main change. The next area on our agenda is special resolutions, and Chair Kirby, do you want me to do that one separate?
Yes,
as we normally do? Okay. It's on page 16, board members. Resolution E12173497, acceptance of grant awards to the Duluth Public Schools. Whereas Minnesota Statute 46503 requires a school district to accept grants by resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full, whereas acceptance of the grant in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools. Now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described grant from said organization in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to this organization. And we have two grants from the Arrowhead Manufacturers and Fabricators Association Educational Trust. One is for the welding rod oven at Denfeld High School for the welding program, and the other is for the all-girls after-school welding program, and it's to purchase helmets, gloves, and welding jackets. One is for $200, one is for $1,500. So I move that we accept these grants.
So it's moved and seconded to accept Resolution E12173497. Any discussion? None? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thank you. I'd like to do that program myself. Then the next item on the agenda is extended field trips, and we have two that are with our Health Occupations Students of America from Denfeld and East. One is where they participated already in a state officer training in November. And the second is an upcoming spring conference for their state leadership conference. So it would be students from both Denfeld and East that are participating. So it's recommended that the Duluth School Board accept and approve both these items for field trip requests. And then the last area is diploma requests, which we have every month. And this month we have 7, I believe. The following students have met all graduation requirements for the Duluth Public Schools and should be awarded a diploma. Logan Marcus Stillwell, Callie Ann Marie Blegan, Nevada R. Iverson, Jovan A. Smallwood, Madison Shirley Misyak, Brandon J. Severin, and Caleb Everin Mendoza. It's recommended that the Duluth School Board accept and approve the above diploma request. There were no policy changes, and future items will be a discussion around weighted grades at the high school level. And I move the Education Committee for this month.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to accept the Education Committee. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of accepting the Education Committee report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have the Human Resources report. Member Sandstead.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. The Human Resources Committee met on December 11th, last Monday, and we reviewed the staffing report. We had some discussion about the hourly and substitute pay rate sheet, and we have some plans over the next month or so. Member Oswald has offered a suggestion for an increase to our minimum wage rate hourly employees who are not substitute. And so we're she's going to be working on exploring that and working with administration and the HR department in terms of the implications for others to some proposed increases. And so we're going to be revisiting that again in the future. But there was a good discussion about different priorities and possibilities amongst board members. We also have a collective bargaining agreement to discuss and approve, which is for the Non-Certified Business Division Administrators Association. And we all have a copy of that, which we received by email sometime last week, I believe, a redlined copy. And Mr. Swirsky, do you want to give a very brief overview here?
There's not a whole lot of changes. We did the language changes in the dates and the salary schedule. We increased the number of days for job postings. Previously it was 3 days, which barely gave, if we didn't have any internal applicants, any external time for people to apply. So that was extended to 7 days. They had language for a sick bank, but it was not, has not been utilized for a number of years, so we reestablished their sick bank. Clarified their seniority tiebreakers, clarified the emergency closing language and the 2-hour late start, and updated the language for the healthcare savings plan eligibility. There was a state recommendation. We used to have an age on all of our healthcare savings plan eligibility, and it's been changed to eligibility for retirement for the state retirement programs. I have a feeling that down the road they are going to be increasing their retirement ages, and that's why they've recommended we make those language changes. The salary schedule, the changes to that for the 17-18 year is 1%, 18-19 1.5, and the 19-20 is 2%. It's a 3-year contract.
Thank you, Mr. Swirsky. Chair Kirby, at this time, I would be glad to read the resolution to approve this agreement.
Sure.
Resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, that the collective bargaining agreements between Independent School District 709 and the Non-Certified Business Division Administrators Association, a summary of which is in the hands of all school board members, the actual agreement is actually in our hands, be approved and adopted for the period of July 1, 2017 to June 30th, 2020 inclusive, and that the chairperson and clerk of the school board be hereby authorized to execute said agreement on behalf of the school district. And so I move resolution HR 12-17-3496.
Second.
Second by Member Oswald. Any discussion? Seeing none? Oh, you have. Okay, sorry, I didn't.
Just a question with regard to contracts. I know that one of the comments today was we've had 2 months in a row where our AFSME partners have come to ask about contracting. I know this is within the realm of contracts. Are we in progress with moving forward with continuing those contract negotiations?
Yes. Unfortunately or unfortunately, the way our contracts ended up, we have all 12 contracts that were up for renewal this year. And we've settled, this will be our 4th contract. We have currently met with ASME with the Paris, and we have dates set for the maintenance group the first full week of January, and we've met on 2 occasions now with the Duluth clerical groups. So we're actively involved in negotiations. It's just it's time consuming. So.
I just want to make sure that even if those are timely, that we're able to communicate with those bargaining units, like the potential times, if that's possible. So thanks for your work on that, and for our allies for coming in tonight. Appreciate that.
Member Leffler-Kemp.
Yes, I know we talked briefly about this at the committee meeting, but for the public's knowledge as well, could you just review the 20 or so staff that fall underneath this contract, just so people better understand what we're approving? Thank you.
The non-certified business unit is made up of members from the finance area, from the IT area, from the food service area. It's a range of management from middle to upper within those ranges. Very, very many areas across the district, though.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Member Welty.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. Mr. Swirsky, you mentioned that this contract we're considering goes from 2017 to 2020. You also, in answer to Member Harlow's question, talked about the challenges of negotiating 12-unit contracts in a single year when frequently in the past we've alternated them so we didn't have to deal with them all. Is there anything about going back to an alternating series of negotiations that accounts for the 2020 end of this? And if not, how would you propose that we get back into a negotiating pattern where we only have roughly half of our contracts to deal with in any given year?
We are working towards that. We had our first 3 contracts were 2-year contracts that will be, resolved for 4 years out. This will be 3 years. We are looking at between 1, 2, and 3-year contracts with the remainders of the groups as we go forward, and hopefully that will resolve that issue. Unfortunately, when we're negotiating these contracts, many of the groups will wait and see how the teachers settle. And this was one of the first years in many, many years that we've gotten ahead on the teachers. We're usually playing catch-up, and the other groups usually decline to come to the table until the teachers have settled. And so we just find ourselves between having the 12 contracts this year and getting ahead on the teachers' contracts, just playing catch-up.
Member Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. Just a couple quick comments on that. In the past, some of our bargaining units have had contracts that have been, some of them 2 years old, or 2 years past due. And again, we've talked about that a lot as a board. I've been advocating that we should be doing these on time and not to have these retroactive. And I think we've been getting good at doing that, and I hope that we can continue, even though it won't be on the board. But I think all the employees would like to know that they're getting paid. Don't have to wait for 2 years after their contract expires to know what their pay is going to be. Also, as you've already mentioned, teachers usually, or I think always go first. The teachers set the mode for all the other ones, and this year it's 1, 1.5, 2, and 2%. And I would hope that all the other bargaining units, and we think we have 13 of them, follow that. And I would hope that some of those would go along in a speedy fashion, as we've been doing in the last couple of years. So I don't think it's a big deal to space that out. These are all set. The main issues, I know there's minor issues, but we should be able to move fast when all our bargaining units have collective bargaining agreements that are due. I hope that they get settled.
Thank you. Member Lefler-Kemp?
I wanted to add, we've talked a little bit about the new board next year, and I know I found it real helpful when I came on the board 4 years ago when we started budget discussions that you kind of laid out through one of our HR committees early on, kind of the process of negotiations and what we do, how it works. And so I just urge you kind of early on, given the contracts that we have coming up right away when the new board comes in, that we put that on the kind of high up to help our board understand, ask questions on our process. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion lights, are we ready to vote on this? All in favor of approving Resolution HR 1217-3496, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Member Sandsted.
Thank you. The next few items were placeholders regarding termination that we do not need to address at this point, and I think We're going to have more of a budget discussion in the business committee, so I can just leave it at that for now. The last item on the Human Resources report was a pay equity report that Mr. Swirsky went over with us that reflected that we don't have any gender inequity in our pay within the district, which is a good thing. So with that, I move the Human Resources report for the month of December.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the HR report, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's see. How about taking a... Yes, if we could take a 5-minute break. Be back at 8 with the business report. All right, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. So we're going to go over this on...
Yeah, I didn't even know it was on there.
I didn't either. I didn't either, but it seems reasonable. It's already on there.
Oh, is it?
Didn't you read it? I mean, really?
I'm very lackadaisical.
You showed up on time. Where's Alana?
17.
Well, I saw that on your...
Bill?
We can certainly add it on to that.
All right, thank you. Our next item is the Business Committee report. Member Harlan.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. Appreciate the opportunity tonight to speak with everyone. So our business committee had a robust discussion. I'm going to give a brief overview of each of our agenda items. Do note to members of the public that our discussion is available on ISD709.org, our school website, where you can see where there are a lot of presentations and questions given. So the first section was with our financial report, reviewing the final audit of the financial report for fiscal year ending on June 30, 2017. It was presented by Whipfley at the December 11th, 2017 Business Committee meeting. When we look at overall with our audit, when it comes to systems and processes, we came out very clean. And so I want to start out that was something that for our staff, I want to thank our staff that work really hard every day on our finances. I know that it's for the amount of budget and numerous line items that come through, it would be easy to miss out on that. I know that oftentimes people are short-staffed, and so I just want to thank you for your work on that, and to hear that from our auditor that has a number of years of experience, just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your hard work on that. So just want to start out with that. Then we take another turn to say that our district, from the audit, we do find that there is, we need to grow with our finances and how we are ensuring that we are covering the budgets that we are setting. As a school board, we work through a process from January through passing it in June. And prior to that, administration works really closely to address budgetary concerns, dreams, vision, goals. There's always discussions about budgets happening throughout the year. Due to a number of circumstances within this year, our audit did come through, and there's been a number of articles about this in the paper. It did come through that we are addressing a deficit when it comes to the closure of our last school year. That's unfortunate, and not a way that I don't assume to speak on behalf of board members, but is not the goal or that any of us would walk into a school year. One of the pieces that we do work hard on ensuring is that we want to be as responsible, we want to be responsible stewards of public dollars. So I know there will be a lot of discussion with regard to that potentially, and there was a lot more information on that audit, but it is important to know that as a board, it is not something that we take lightly. It is not something that the administration takes lightly, and I think it's easy. There's a lot of frustrations that happened throughout this week, for example, where there was communication opportunities that could have been built on with how staff were communicated with in response to this, and we can continue to grow and work together. And we can continue to make sure that our budgets are based on what our community needs are. And so I want to thank the staff that are working as hard as they can for people for stepping out in response to things. And also, I just want to go with what Bernie said earlier, people have said, is taking an opportunity to breathe together. And when we do this together and we work together, we can find ways to move forward. So that is my review of the audit. When we look at the approval of payment claims, that is included. I'm going to move, so within the budget revisions, there listed on our agenda is an adjustment to the special education budget, but I'd like to, for Member Welty's budget amendment to the agenda, I would like to add that to item C. So I asked the chair, and we'll pass this over to the superintendent and board leadership to discuss our processes in moving forward with regard to the audit piece that I talked about, and also just ensuring that we are trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can while addressing safe and positive work environments for our staff.
Thank you. I did want to note that this could be an action item, but you could make it an action item if you so chose after you hear more about it, just where it is on the agenda right now. So I sent you some information earlier today, and it was also in your folder. For those of you who are in the audience, Melinda and Jackie have more copies of this. If you'd like to have one in your hands as we're going through this, feel free to grab a copy from them, and I'll let people have a minute to do that.
50 cents each. That's what they charge at this.
We are going to be charging for those copies as well.
Got to balance the budget somehow.
Oh, sorry.
Do you want to say something?
All right.
Wait.
Oh.
Member Johnston?
Yes, I have a parliamentary inquiry. If I could, rather than a point of order. I thought that the budget revisions were going to be in 1C, but
Isn't that what we're in?
I thought that's where we were at.
Yeah, that's where we are.
Okay, well, usually we go through and have somebody, the chair of the committee talks about each, and then we go back and pull those, and, I would prefer it to be done that way. This is normally how we do things.
Can I point it?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Doesn't make a difference to me.
Well, I mean, we could spend time going back and forth on how this is going to be, but the chair decided that it was going to be presented at this point in time, so I would rather just ensure that the presentation happens with how this goes.
Yeah, let's go.
So, Chair, it's up to you.
Yeah, let's just go ahead with it, and then we'll cover all the other two. All right, go ahead.
All right. As we spoke about at the Budget Committee and before that and through communications that we've had, you know that we have been addressing a significant budget shortfall. We needed to address a $2 million reduction for the second semester. As Member Harla said in the audit report, there was a general fund balance at the end of that of a negative $485. There was money in other restricted accounts that brought the reserves to that $111,000. Keep in mind that the audit is a picture. It's one moment in time of the finances, and the state is not finished calculating everything for that year. So, ironically, very late last week, we learned of an adjustment that was made for the FY17 of a positive $600,000, which means that the general fund wouldn't have ended at a negative number. It would have ended at a positive number, and the reserves would have been a little bit higher. It would not have been where we wanted to be, but there we do have that positive adjustment of $600,000 that we didn't have when we spoke earlier this week. So that is one piece of this puzzle. We have been trying, we've been working with principals and administrators and everybody who has ideas. We've gathered them. We've spent a great deal of time collaborating and brainstorming, and this list is a product of that. It represents $1,590,500 of the $2 million that needs to be addressed for a second semester. So I thought I would just kind of quickly run down this list, give you a very brief description of what these items are so that you know what you are considering. The first one on the list is to delay telepresence. We've had some conversations about that and the possibility of installing those in our high schools. We're going to delay that process, and that's $200,000. There's a prior period revenue adjustment of about $100,000. As I said, the state is continuing to adjust as we go along. That is a different adjustment than the $600,000 adjustment that was listed above. This one was in special education. Delay tech purchases. One of the items we had coming into this year's budget was an investment of $250,000 to update some technology. We are going to go ahead with about $50,000 of that, so there's $200,000 listed on this sheet. A likely property sale that is not a finalized. I don't have official papers for you. This is a process that we've been working on for a number of years. Actually, it is regarding the Hartley property and the desire to have a buffer zone around Hartley. So it's about purchasing a piece of that. The city has been working with many partners to get a grant to do that, and that grant has been granted. And so we'll be entering the process of negotiating and working through that purchase process, and we believe that will be completed by the end of the fiscal year in June. Unspent special ed PD, professional development funds, we had an investment item of $25,000 going into the year. We have accomplished what we were hoping to in $20,000, so there was $5,000 there that we could use. Unfilled position after leave of absence. We have an employee who has requested a mid-career leave for the rest of the year, and we would not fill that position when they left. It is a position outside the classroom, but it hasn't been public, so I'm not going to say more than that yet. Site staff development funds, we had made an investment of $60,000 last year. After meeting with principals and staff, there's a recommendation that we use half of that to address this budget. Still leaves them half of those funds at the sites. Delay filling plumber position. We have had a plumber position open. We have had difficulty finding someone to take that position, and we have been able to use some of our existing staff to address some of those plumbing issues. There are some things that you need a plumber's license for, and so we left some room for contracting should the necessity come. But eventually we would think about filling that, but this would be a good trial for seeing if we can do that in-house. Unallocated budget reduction. There are funds each year that we have set aside for middle school use. They already have some of that allocation. It was unused at this point, and they opted to use that for budget reduction. Curriculum content meetings would be canceled for the rest of the year. I believe there's still some of them that are planned, some things that are in process that would be going on. There would be more information on what was canceled and what is continuing, but that is a reduction in that area. Position funding change, that is taking an existing position and moving the funding source to a non-general fund source that is allowable within another fund. Half the media supply budgets, that also came as a result of some of our staff brainstorming sessions. Still allows our media to make some new purchases, but limits them. Facilities Capitals Fund, this is pretty self-explanatory. Temporary clerical position, it's a posting that we've had that has been unfilled. We won't fill it for the rest of the year. District-wide CIT meetings, that's continuous improvement teams at the buildings. We've been gathering those teams together to do some cross-meeting between schools, and we will go out to the sites to meet with those CITs rather than have them join together, and that's $6,500. IT clerical, should say unfilled. That is another position that we had planned for but have been unable to fill, and we will forego filling it. Same below, an unfilled paraprofessional position. We have not been able to find someone to take that, and so that's another one that we will not fill. Requested reduction of FTE by an employee for personal reasons. They're looking to have a small reduction in their FTE, so that is a savings. Special education budget reduction. They had budgeted to purchase some new testing materials, which are not needed at this time, and so they will delay that purchase. PCA MA billing is something that we will begin to do second semester, and that would be a new revenue source. And so I've given that a conservative number of $25,000. Thought was that could likely be more, but I wanted to be conservative until we see how that turns out. Electrician, as somewhat like the plumber position, we've been unable to find an electrician, and so we will leave that position unfilled. I know the first version I sent out said unfurled, but it is unfilled. And then the prior year adjustment, that is the amount from above, that's $600,000. The $600,000 is split between the $485,000 that was negative in that account last year and brings forward $115,000. What this does is it leaves the remaining amount of $409,500 that would be unaddressed moving into FY19. We would be moving forward with that deficit. However, it does allow us the next several months to continue to work together and collaborate and plan for reductions for FY19. I also have to say that as you can see, a number of these items are one-time reductions that would need to pull forward into FY19. We have not finished our projections for next year. We don't know what our revenues will be at this time. So we're unsure of what the deficit will be for FY19, but this number would have to be added to it. The audit report of 485 negative, this is slightly better at 409 negative at the end of 18. We would, of course, continue to seek ways to save money along the way so that we could whittle away at this number as much as we could. The question about statutory operating debt, if we did not address any of this, we would be very close. If we address the identified items here for $1,590,000 and had 409 as a deficit, that's about 0.4% of the budget. Statutory operating debt is at 2.5%. It's not something I bring to you easily or lightly. My fiduciary responsibility for the district says that we should really be balancing this budget. Given our timeline, given our situation, I think that this allows us some time to breathe and to work together to come up with creative solutions moving into next year. So that is my presentation on this, other than saying this plan does not include any mid-year layoffs. Questions?
Member Oswald.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. I've had a couple hours to mull this consideration over. The thing that strikes me is exactly what Ms. Burnham had said during her public comment about how these cuts are not going to stop people from paying their bills at Christmas time, nonetheless. It's not going to solve layoffs, I don't believe. We're in a very tough situation moving forward. Many of these expenses are only delayed. They're going to need to be paid for eventually. We have technology that can break. It's at its end of life cycle. It gets outdated. We have jobs that are going to need to be filled eventually. So by all means, these are not ideal cuts to make. But I want to make sure that the public knows that we're a team in this and we're trying to do this all together. These are great sacrifices made by many schools and individuals. Creative uses of money. I'm very impressed by the talent of our teams to be able to come up with ways that we can cut expenses but not cut people. Because we're in the business of people and we need people to help people. So it's with that hope that I'm going to support this. But with the expectation that right after break we hit it hard in addressing these cuts immediately, because we know they're there and we know we're going to have to cut, and we need to start identifying and working on it absolutely right now, not only to ensure that we are able to do it, but to make sure MDE knows that we're serious about this. We're not just being all willy-nilly with our money, and that the public knows that we're doing this and they need to trust us with their money, and we're trustworthy because, yes, we're going to take care of this. If I have anything to say about it, but I'm only one of 7 people. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to not have to vote on layoffs at Christmas time.
Thanks. Member Welty.
I just have one critical comment, and it's a recommendation. This discovery has been characterized, or some significant portion of it as a change to a formula took place that nobody knew anything about or was not expected. I hope I don't hear that explanation given too much in the future as the new school board proceeds, because I don't think it cuts much mustard. I do have just a question. When Mr. Hansen was here, I recall going through the budget, and we discovered that there was an item in the budget. I can't recall what it was called, but it was essentially sort of an emergency fund. And I asked at the time if it was part of our reserve fund, the reserve fund that we no longer have. And it was explained to me that this was sort of an emergency fund, but it was not part of the reserve fund. And I can't recall what the amount of it was, but it seemed to me it was maybe $300,000 or something like that. I remember at the time I called it a slush fund. I said, that sounds like a slush fund to me, and that was not a characterization that anybody in the business department particularly appreciated.
Contingency.
Contingency, that was it. That's right, contingency fund. Is there any contingency fund left that if we, the new school board, is hit with any unanticipated expenses, which would be not an unusual thing to happen. Is there still a contingency fund that gives the district any financial wiggle room, or is that now spent down too?
Mr. Hassler?
We do have funds classified for that purpose, but as you know, one never knows. If we're fortunate and we move through the year without unanticipated expenses coming our way, that would be helpful to our process. But year in, year out, budget year in, budget year out, you need to have something to address those needs that develop over the course of the year. So it would be our hope that not only that we have it now and hopefully we don't have to use it too much, but it would also be incorporated into future budget planning.
Thank you. Member Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. A couple housekeeping questions. First of all, the Hartley sale, is that the whole property or is that just part of it?
We haven't had those conversations yet, and it would still need to be defined as part of that process, but it is not the whole property that has been under conversation before. It's been a small buffer around it, which would leave the residential corner, and we would be able to then sell that piece as residential. This has been kind of a holdup of selling pieces of that property.
Okay, again, and being on the Park and Rec Board, or in liaisons, we bring that up frequently, and I'm glad to see there's some movement going on that. It's disappointing we couldn't have sold the rest of it too, which I think is the more expensive property, but I'm hoping that can happen in the future.
Can I respond? Sure. It was a zoning piece, and so once that is determined, we should be able to get the zoning changed, and then we'd be able to sell those pieces.
Good. Yeah, it's going to be a good addition to Hartley, of course, as well as good addition to us, helping us out financially. So that's good to see that happening. The other question was on the remaining deficit that you've got down as $409,000, or a predicted deficit for next year. That's unrestricted fund deficit, correct?
Right.
Right. Okay, and that's an estimate we know, but now that is assuming then that is taking into account that $600,000 adjustment that we got. So that's assuming we don't have that $485,000 deficit.
Correct.
Okay. I do have some comments, but just when we're talking about that one, have you heard anything yet from MDE on that? It seems like something they would not be too fond of us doing if we have potential ways to address it in other ways, as has been talked about in the last week here. And I'm just wondering if you've got any feedback from them on MD. I've got some comments on it, but just first of all, if you've heard anything from them.
Mr. Hassler?
Yep.
There you go.
Be happy to give you a brief update. The MDE staff is aware of our negative fund balance for the unrestricted general fund component. They have communicated with us. They contacted us to let us know that they're concerned about that. We're obviously concerned about that, and they are encouraging us certainly to take appropriate steps to address that. At this stage of the process, they're not in a position to require any particular process or proposal from us. If we would continue to have a negative fund balance, and or if we would approach or ever exceed the statutory operating debt threshold, they would become more and more directly involved in our processes. So I think my objective, and I think it's an objective most of you would share, we need to address this going forward so that we don't end up having decisions made for us rather than making the best decisions that we ourselves can make and implement to address our needs going forward.
Thank you. Member Harla?
Thank you. Superintendent, appreciate the presentation, and felt that collective sigh of relief earlier as folks knew that it wasn't going to be that. So I know it wasn't an easy week for administration either, and so just want to address that as well too. And I want to make a motion to approve the FY18 reductions as presented and direct administration to work alongside board, union, and community leaders to balance the FY18 budget in FY18.
FY19.
FY19, okay.
It's been moved and seconded. Can you
Happy to read it. So I moved it. Yeah. And who got the second?
Member Welty.
Okay. So I move to approve the fiscal year 18 reductions as presented and direct administration to work alongside board, union, and community leaders to balance the FY19 budget.
Thank you. Member Stansted, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, I think that summarizes things well. I think one other element that we heard from the auditor was a recommendation that we maintain 1/9 of our budget as kind of a buffer. And so I would hope that we're going beyond balancing, but creating that buffer. And that's on us, but it's also something that as a community we can talk to our legislators who in Duluth are very supportive of fully funding schools, but perhaps when you're visiting with family over the next few weeks who live in other parts of the state, you can have a conversation about state funding for schools and ensuring that we're getting sufficient funding, not just in general, but also for special education to cover the costs to educate our students well. So I would just encourage people to reach out at that level also.
Thank you. Member Lefler-Kemp.
Yep, thank you. I too just want to add, again, a thank you to all of our staff district-wide, including our administrative staff for, I know, a lot of work that was done in the last few days. I had a question on the one item, allocated budget reduction, and you referenced our middle schools. Can you just share that a little bit more? I wasn't as clear on that reduction, and I just wanted more clarification.
Yes, I believe the history on that particular item goes back maybe 20 years or so. There was a referendum when we went to a middle school model. And so that item has always been called the middle school referendum allocation, although the referendum which it is referencing has been expired for probably 15 years. However, we have continued to support the middle school model, and so we have given part of that in allocation, and part of that has been held and used as discretionary at the middle level. And so this year, this was the unallocated portion that the schools had, and rather than spend it on more staff or more things, they have said, take this and please use it to address the deficit.
Okay. And then just another follow-up question. I guess what I want to make sure we have very clearly laid out is a timeline for these discussions to happen as we move forward. And I know we have the budget discussion, which is laid out in our annual report for the public, but I think it's just really important for public trust and staff trust and confidence to really have a clear timeline laid out. And I'm not saying at this moment, but shortly.
Yeah, sure. We do have some draft timelines and dates for committees of the whole as a new board comes together to do some some training on school funding and all the funding streams and working on projections. And so we kind of have that laid out from here until June. And as the new board comes on, we'll verify those dates and those timelines and continue our budget process, working with Quality Steering Committee and with community members as we have in the past. In addition to that, I've charged Mr. Hassler with bringing back together our community finance group and to bring in our financial advisors and to develop a long-term plan for reestablishing a healthier reserve account.
Member Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. A little bit about history of this, history going back a whole week when we first heard about the budget reduction or required budget problems. It went along with our audit from last year, and then it kind of went right into what's going on this year. And then we found out, I guess we found out then that we had a $2 million shortfall of this year's budget after we approved the budget in June. That was less than 5 months ago. And since then, we've had a couple iterations, which I think were good. I'm just going to mention them. One was a possibility of having, call it furlough, I guess it was maybe called, about potentials of employees not working a couple days. That apparently was supported at one time by the unions, and apparently that support went away kind of quickly. I don't know why, but it's kind of interesting. Then we have a special meeting scheduled for Thursday, which I assume this is going to negate that. But that meeting was going to then look at possible reductions in staff, and which is something that I would have voted against, obviously. But we do have to deal with something, and we have to deal with this, is we cannot deficit spend, although apparently we're going ahead and planning to have a deficit spending this year, but it does kind of concern me. So all these iterations we went through has happened very quickly. And I'll say, first of all, if we would have had the Thursday meeting, I would have been opposed to any layoffs. I would have voted against that. Of course, if the whole board would have voted against that, it would have been interesting what would have happened. Because then what would we have done? I don't know. This is certainly it's a step which I don't really like, but it may be a necessary thing. The superintendent actually called me up and talked to me about today. Thank you, superintendent, for that call. It was very much appreciated, so I wasn't taken by surprise. And again, I don't like kicking the can down the road, or maybe we're tired of that terminology, but maybe rolling the candlestick down the hill. but anyway, it's something I really don't like doing. But nonetheless, that may be something I'm hoping we can get better minds, maybe than mine, since I won't be here in the future to look at this. So I'm hoping best of luck for everybody on that. But there's a few issues that I do want to bring up, because I think it's important going forward that we, the new board member, citizens, as well as the people in the school, pay attention to. And I haven't heard these mentioned yet, so I am going to go through a few things on that. First of all, what are the causes of our budget shortfall? One of the causes that is not is our enrollment. Our APU, as we now call it. This year, we actually we're 150 students up over what we were last year in December. That is actually the first increase in many, many years, in fact, maybe decades, maybe centuries. But we did have a slight increase. I think we had about a 10 increase in 2011 or something like that. 150 is significant. Why that's important to bring up is that 150 students is going to bring in about $2 million in additional revenue this year. And what I don't understand is that we have that additional $2 million in revenue coming in. We don't know that yet, but it's looking likely that that's hold. It's been holding fairly steady since September. And so here we're going to have $2 million revenue. If we would have went down, as we have been in the past, we would have been really hurting. We would have had a $4 million deficit. I mean, maybe, I'm not sure if, where we're going on the accounting on that. If we're, when I recall, the budget was indicating that we were planning to have an increased number of enrollment, and looking at the POO table, we are above our budgeted enrollment now. That's something we've been planning out, so we're already above what we had. So I don't quite understand why we're having this crisis now when we've had $2 million increase, likely $2 million increase in our budget, so it doesn't matter. I do want to bring up the charter school thing. It's been used as excuses time and time again. I want to thank the Duluth News Tribune for doing an article on that today. I think it showed very clear that that is why it may be a slight issue. It is certainly not a big issue. As we all know, there hasn't been any change in special ed law. And to say that this was a change, a totally unexpected change, that we were saying when we talk about the audit, that would cause a $1 million reduction last year, and who knows, another $2.5 million this year. I really think that using special ed as an excuse on this is really, first of all, wrong. Secondly, it's unconscionable. Special ed kids need help. If we're going to second guess that Edison is giving too much help to their special ed kids, I would suggest you talk to their parents and talk to the paras that work in Edison to see if they are over helping their special ed kids. I think you're going to find out no, they're not. And I think that blaming special ed is just plain wrong. I think it's inexcusable for us to be blaming special ed and/or particularly special ed in Edison why we have this problem. So I'll just reiterate what Member Welty said. I hope we don't hear this anymore because it's really not a legitimate issue. Okay, what else is a problem? First of all, we've been given poor advice by the administration the way we pay our long debt. It was mentioned by Barb Welcome. I've mentioned this many times, but we have to reiterate that because it hasn't even been talked about. This year we paid $3.3 million out of the general fund to pay for long-term debts. The general fund is supposed to go to the classroom, not paying debts. According to the auditor and MDE, when I've talked to them, no other school in the state of Minnesota pays long-term debts out of the general fund. We as a board acknowledged this here, and several months ago we passed a resolution to tell administration to look at this. And so far they came back and said, oh, we can't do anything. They got the advice from the same people that put us in this position in the first place. This is a drain on the general fund. It's catching up to us. Since 2010, since I've been on the board, we have literally pulled $38 million out of the general fund. $38 million. There's no wonder at all why we have budget issues on this school. We are unique in bringing that much money out of our general fund. We are unique in the state of Minnesota. Why? Because nobody else will do it, because it's really a dumb thing to do. It's something that nobody else would have ever done with proper financial advice. And we talked about trust and creative solutions. I presented a lot of those that we can. I think that we have to use some creativity in getting our solutions out there, and most of all, get credible legal financial advice. We have not got that, nor has the administration or the CFO even acknowledged that that's an issue. And I've also talked to the union president about the union president has refused to even, I shouldn't say that, they don't seem to want to do anything about it. $3.3 million this year. We would not be in this situation if that was not there. Okay, some other issues. We could have sold central property for $14.2 million, but the administration, in this case the teachers, said no. We haven't been able to even sell it for $1 like we did for Lincoln Park. It's supposedly the most valuable property in Duluth, and we can't, the administration can't even sell it for anything. Total, we were told we were going to get $26 million in property sales. I think we've got, $4 million so far, so we're short over $20 million in property sales. That's caused by the administration. That's one of the reasons we're in this situation. Barb Welcome mentioned this again, I'll reiterate it. We have not reduced our energy consumption. The administration promised us that would reduce our expenses by nearly $1 million per year. It has not happened. It hasn't happened at all. Okay, the next item I'm going to bring up, I'm going to talk about, first of all, it's going to be an awkward topic, but it's a big elephant in the room. I guess we got several big elephants in the room. The debt payment is the biggest one, but here's another big one. I voted for the teacher pay salary, and I'm very proud of having done that. But there is some stuff we have to acknowledge about that. The average teacher salary in Duluth is $62,892. That was from MDE. Last year's 2016-17. That is the highest average salary in Greater Minnesota. Just compare some other salaries that we have. Say, for example, Rochester. School is almost twice as big as ours. Their average teacher salary is $60,000. Hermantown, nearby, average teacher salary is $59,000. Mankato, school almost the same size as ours now, average teacher salary $57,000. ESCO, $54,000. Proctor, $52,000. Not only are we paying the highest salaries of teachers in Greater Minnesota, we're also one of the highest in the state. And as everybody knows, the economy in the cities is much better than ours. And I think it's something we have to acknowledge, that the board have to acknowledge, citizens in this city have to acknowledge it. We talk about, we have approximately $25,000 in benefits to our employees. Of that, $15,000 is health care. According to MDE, Gary Lee, our health benefits are maybe the best in the state of Minnesota schools. The average looks like for health benefits for other schools in the state of Minnesota, they don't have the exact number, but it appears to be well under $10,000. We're at $15,000, plus all the other benefits like dental and everything amounts to $25,000. That's a lot. It's a big elephant in the room. And when we passed the teacher's contract in June, about the same time we passed the budget, we were not told what the general fund balance was going to be. I asked that. We were not told that somebody should have had some idea only 5 months ago that we were going to have a negative $2 million after, remember, we already started out with a deficit of $2 million, I believe it was $1.9 million, that the budget supposedly took care of. And now here suddenly, only 5 months later, we have another $2 million in unexpected shortfalls. We should have been told that. I cannot believe that somebody did not know that when we negotiated with the teacher salary. I have voted for that. I'm very proud of voting for that. Teachers should make that as well as all the other employees. But the fact of the matter is that should have been brought up, so it should have been a discussion with the community. If it wasn't brought up, that shows somebody isn't doing their job here. And that was an opportunity we had to at least address it. And why is that important? This year we've estimated the increase because of the increase in salaries about $600,000, not counting health benefits. Next year will be up another $900,000, and then we'll have 2 years of increases of $1.4 million. So compare that with where we're at now. We have a lot of issues that we have to deal with that haven't even been talked about in this room here today. In general, I guess, why are we at this now? Everybody should be asking that question. It's been brought up before, but it hasn't been asked enough. And I'll make a statement that we should have known and prepared for this during contract negotiations. We should have been making a plan to remedy the basic budget deficit issues that we have known about for over 8 years. Remember, our budget, our fund balance was $20 million when I got on the board in 2010. It's now virtually zero. This is not something that just came up. This is not a slice of time that just appeared because of some glitch in the accounting. It's been facing us ever since I've been on the board, and I'm sure long before that. We should have known this. We should have made plans for this. In fact, we did nothing. It's nice to hear there's some plans now, but plans should have been done 10 years ago. We're in this position now because of very basic financial incompetence by this administration. And it's time that people acknowledge that. It's time that everybody keeps telling me when I talk to them, well, gee, why isn't somebody doing about this? Well, the fact of the matter is, this is caused by this administration, and we have to do something about it, and we have not been doing anything about it. The administration has not been doing anything about it. And so I'll be voting for this somewhat reluctantly because it's, again, kicking the can down the road. It's something that has been staring at us in the face for 8 years since I've been on the board. Finally, the board has acknowledged that we finally actually had a discussion on it this year. Some of our pulling money out of the general fund to pay for the debts. As even the auditor talked about it this time. It's very unique. And it should not take a crisis like this to force us to finally do something. And I'm worried that it's not enough. And it's certainly not enough because we should be getting, as Member Sandstead said, we should be having $1 million, or I think it's a $10 million reserve fund is what our policy even says. We haven't had it. And I'd like to see some way, again, I won't be on the board anymore, so I'm hoping that this board, the new board, can address this. I'm hoping people in the city, I hope that the teachers look at all the issues that we've got and do something about it this time and not keep saying, oh, we're going to deal with it. We haven't dealt with it in the past, and I'm afraid that we're not going to be able to deal with it now with the administration that we have.
Superintendent, do you want to respond?
Yeah, there was a lot there. I'm not going to address some pieces of it, but I did want to explain the piece about, I certainly don't blame Edison. I don't deny that we have needs, that we have students with high levels of needs that need to be addressed, and we need to have special education in our schools. Where the glitch came in was with the legislation that was passed, and with a base set in FY16, happened to coincide with a year that Edison had increased expenditures. That was in the paper today as well, that they went from 1.6 million to 2.5 million in 2016. 2016 happened to be when the formula was set. In a column where we usually have 150 to 200,000 positive, which is resident students served elsewhere, which is a tuition adjustment from the state. Generally, that has been a positive number. Historically, that has been a positive number. That is what we built our budget on, historical average of what we see there. In this particular year, with this particular combination of spending, that column was 1.2 negative. That is where the difference in our formula came, because the base was set when we saw a 1.2 million negative in our tuition adjustment. So our cap for special education is now $1.2 million below where it would have been if that base had been set the year before, or if that base had been set on a 5-year average. So our issue is with how that was set, not that it was specifically who it was doing the spending. It's how that legislation set that base. So I don't want the conversation to be around special education or which charter school. I want it to be around how that base was set and how we can change it by working with other school districts across the state who are also experiencing the same thing: Minneapolis, St. Paul, Rochester, St. Cloud, Elk River. We see Minneapolis addressing a $33 million deficit this year, and their cross-subsidy is a large part of it as well. So this isn't something that we could see coming. This isn't something that we could plan for. And it is the legislation and the cap and how it was set that has got us to the situation that we are in. If our special education revenue had been $1.2 million more, that is what our reserve would have been. But because we didn't get that revenue, that came out of our reserve instead. I know these are really complex issues, and to explain it in a way that everyone can understand it takes a while, and I usually need pictures. But I just wanted to make that point.
Member Welty.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. I guess I've just something I want to give a heads up to the new school board members, two of whom will be joining the board in January here this evening.
All three are here.
Oh, are all three?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that you all ought to start researching statutory operating debt. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. What I do know is that I was elected in 1996 to the school board for the first time, just after the school district fell into statutory operating debt. There was a crisis. We had a tough-minded new superintendent who made lots of cuts. One of the things that strikes me about this $1.6 million worth of cuts is these are pretty easy cuts. And so far, we're not talking about axing teachers. These are easy cuts, and we're getting to make these cuts. I'm not sure that the new school board in the coming years is going to have a chance to make quite so many easy cuts as we're making this evening. Statutory operating debt might not be the worst thing that ever happened. As I said, just before I was elected, we got a new superintendent who made very tough, unpopular decisions. He was not popular with the teachers, but we ended up taking advantage of a law that's no longer available to us to get a referendum passed and build up a 10% reserve fund, which we no longer have. The difficulty that the new board is going to face is the one that we are currently existing. Our school district right now raises levies against local property taxpayers $31 million every year, but only $2.5 million of that is available for things other than paying off the long-range facilities plan debt. That's nothing for a school district of the size of Duluth. We just don't have money for the operating budget. And the new school board will find themselves in the same situation. A budget reserve disappears very quickly. When I got elected again 4 years ago, the state legislature, controlled by an education-friendly group of legislators, pump more money into the district, and we found ourselves with $3 million. It disappeared very quickly. I made up my own business card when I first got elected to the school board in 1996. That was before the district provided them to administrators. And on my little card, I put down the famous quote by the philosopher Santayana. It says, "Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it." Well, I think we're heading back where we were before I got elected back in 1996. It's not going to be pretty. I don't know that I necessarily want to cast blame, but I do think that the new board members ought to be finding out what statutory operating debt means. Perhaps there will be a golden lining somewhere if that is to happen, but these are easy cuts. The next ones may be very, very tough. I wish the new board good luck.
Member Harlett.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. Just with regard to Member Johnston's monthly speech. So I just want to make sure that I make a comment that when we're talking about the budget deficits, in agreements with what Superintendent had said, that we aren't blaming special education families. I actually want to point out that it's a system of funding for how this has been set, and actually this process for setting up how schools are funded is actually making all of us who really care about public education, who care about kids, fight against each other. And this is actually just realistically a child of corporate greed that is trying to run all of our school systems across our country, privatizing education. And at the end of the day, it takes away from we as local communities to be able to decide how we want to educate our students, and it makes us have to fight against each other. But the enemy aren't each other. The enemy are the people that are above us, that are balancing the backs of us as middle-class people. So let's just be really clear about that. When we look at our budget, 20% of our current budget was special ed as we look this evening. That should be funded. We should be ensured that that's fully funded, and we should be getting fully reimbursed at the state and federal level, and in asking those people that keep passing on the buck back to us as local taxpayers to actually need to address that. I want to speak to the comment about our teachers having the highest salary in Greater Minnesota. We also have some of the most educated staff in Greater Minnesota as well too, and teachers in the nation. So I'm not ashamed that we pay our teachers well. They should have that. I also find it unfortunate that I was driving in the Twin Cities recently, and we pay month after month to have to pay off the beautiful schools that we have, where we have great air quality. I see, former member Ann Wasson, who spoke tonight, had to make some tough decisions, and we have schools that we can be really proud of, and our state taxes are paying to pay off a beautiful football stadium when they should be helping us to pay off our local school debts. So unfortunately, even as we look at this upcoming tax bill that takes away from the state and local tax deduction, we will continue to be receiving all of this that trickles down to us when nothing really does, and we as local elected officials have to take the hand that's dealt to us until we as communities come together to make changes on this. Member Welty, you want to address that about you saying that these are quote-unquote pretty easy cuts. I would agree that these appear to be cuts that are that would be easy, but I wouldn't say that when we've heard from our maintenance unit that they have a lot on their schedules, and so we're asking people to do less with less. And when we say that library budgets are going to be less, it means less books and it means less other pieces. When we talk about each of these line items, nothing is easy about changing these things. So I wouldn't be flippant about making these decisions. And I hand this off to a future board that I really care about and that our community loudly spoke to support moving forward, to lead our community, to say, I thank you for your service and want to see that these decisions can be made. I know they're not going to take these easily. So nothing is flippant about that, Member Welty. So what I do have to say is that this is an important piece. I thank our administration, I thank our community for doing this, and I will be supporting the motion I moved.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Member Leffler-Kemp, you haven't spoken.
I will be supporting this motion, and thank you for how well it was worded, Member Harla. I think just a couple of things I want to kind of respond to is we had a room full of our staff, many who were our union professional staff here earlier tonight. And I do take note to the comments that were made about what we provide our staff. And I am proud that we are a district that values health care benefits for our staff. I am proud that we are a district that supports paying our teachers well, and that we have teachers with master's degrees, many across our district. That does increase the salaries, but it also says a lot about their professionalism as well. And I am glad that we value collective bargaining as a district. I am also, this isn't what I wanted to vote on tonight, but I'm confident, given the many conversations I've had in the last few days and just the discussion tonight, that we have a commitment from staff to come together creatively with us. We know we have hardworking staff at the administrative level, and I am confident that we have some excellent new board members coming on board to help us through these challenging times. And so I look forward to moving forward with a board that will work in a positive way.
Thank you. Member Johnson, we have a motion before us and a lot of other agenda to get through, so do you have something short?
It's not short, no, but I'll speak what I have to speak. First of all, I made it very clear that I supported the collective bargaining agreement. I voted for that, and I'm very proud of voting for it. And it's very irritating to have members here say that I'm not. As I started out, my preface was that I was very proud to have voted for that. I also said that the fact of the matter is we have to look at some of this stuff. And we haven't been looking at this stuff. I don't particularly appreciate snide comments like monthly speech. I heard that from Member Harla now for 4 years, and it's thank goodness I won't have to hear it anymore.
Can we speak to the motion, please? I think that
was, you didn't call her to order when that was said, so I think I have a right to respond to that. Part of the civility code, one thing that I added was show your evidence, share your reasoning. I've done that repeatedly, and apparently some people don't like our civility code. And I think that it's important that we show our evidence and share our reasoning, and that's what I do. If you don't like it, please don't make snide comments about it. One thing that Member Welty and I don't agree on is that this has been coming up, and it's been mentioned several times about statutory operating debt. What does that do? It changes the way our tax levy certification is figured in. In other words, everybody listening to this, you will be paying more taxes. And why? Because of incompetent financial management that's been going on by this board for 8 years. I will end it off with adding what Member Welty said, the past is prologue, which is Shakespeare.
All right. Can you read the motion once again, Member Harla?
I move to amend the FY18 reductions as presented and direct administration to work alongside board, union, and community leaders to balance the FY19 budget.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded. I see no other lights. All in favor of this say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Art abstained.
You abstained? One abstention. Member Johnson abstained. All right, you may proceed with the rest here.
Great. Heading through, wire transfers, investment transaction, APU projections are up, as well as fundraisers. There were no bids, quotes, or RFPs. New policy regulations with new policy 204A. Just want to make a note that we did receive a memo from Mr. Hassler. And so with regard to new policy 204, we had a discussion about moving these to bylaws. And Mr. Hassler, my question for you is that the last paragraph on that says, in order to maintain the continuity of this process and the policies, the 200 series will be renamed from 0200 school board to 0200 school board bylaws. I think that actually needs to happen through board action. And so I just want to I don't think that administration can just change the name. I know it's a detail-oriented process, but due to the fact that it's a name change, we have had to approve name changes in the past, though that has only taken one reading. So that may be something that next month, when you bring these back, I would just encourage that that we approve this tonight, and the name change happen next month to ensure that they're all covered. And I'm wondering if Member Oswald will be comfortable with that motion to make sure that that's covered, or not motion, but encouragement.
Thank you for covering my question very thoroughly. I just am very comfortable with it. I just want to ensure that if we're going to vote to delete bylaws tonight, that I be assured that it will become a bylaw in the future, meaning next month, not like 12 years from now.
I see a nodding of Mr. Hassler's head. Great.
Member Sandstedt?
Yeah, speaking to that point, I just wanted to make sure if we're passing 204 tonight as a policy, when it turns into a bylaw, we're going to have to change the references internally as well from policy to bylaw. So that's an element that is not here yet.
Yeah, okay.
So we might need to move to table it.
Yeah, let's just do that.
I would, with that said, I'll move to table definitely until,
Postpone.
Postpone definitely until next month to make sure that the wording is approved. So that would mean the new policies and regulations. Would that mean all of them or just this? Or I think it's just this one, or would it be all of them? Superintendent?
Yeah, Superintendent.
I believe the intent would be that the whole of the 200 section would say bylaw above it, not that each one would say bylaw. Does it already say that? So they would all still continue to be policies, but the recognition would be that those policies as a section make up your bylaws.
Chair, there's a number of questions about that.
Yes, I have some too. Mr. Hassler, do you want to weigh in?
I don't know that I'm going to add much beyond what Melinda said. The specific individual policy currently does not reflect anything as a bylaw. It is reflected as a series. The 9,000 series is now reflected in totality as being school board bylaws. As we are going through the process of shifting to the MSBA policies, those policies are transitioning into the 0200 series. And so the suggestion is not to change any policy, not to say in policy 204 that this is a bylaw, but to designate the 0200 series and anything that would currently remain in the 9,000 series as being bylaws.
Member Sandstead.
I'm a little uncomfortable with that in that when these have come before us for review, they just come one policy at a time. And if I, in the future, see, policy 207, and it says policy, and there's no reminder that this is actually a bylaw, I feel like that is an opportunity for an error in terms of making changes, given that the votes to change a policy is different than the votes needed to change a bylaw. So I think that caution would say that the individual bylaws themselves should reflect they are bylaws rather than just being within a chapter that makes them bylaws. That's my opinion.
Back to my motion.
Let Member Oswald speak first.
And I also, a few months back, we had the same discussion about a policy that is already been adopted into the 200 series, where Section 2, I don't remember which policy number it is, but there's only a handful in 200 right now, that item number 2 in that policy says it's a general statement of bylaw. So I think that's where Member Sandstead is going, is that if it's a policy, there's a general statement of policy, where if it's a bylaw, there's a general statement of bylaw.
Postpone it.
I think it's a simple change that we can adopt relatively quickly. I think there's only 6 or 7 in the 200s or so. I'm okay with that, with whatever power that makes that happen.
So can I move to postpone definitely this discussion until the January meeting so that it can be brought, or actually with the new board having a lot to do in January, Member Oswald, could we postpone definitely to February? Or are you?
I'm in no hurry.
Melinda? Superintendent Chair. Okay, so moved and seconded to postpone.
Was there a second?
Sandstead.
Okay, any further discussion on this? All in favor of postponing definitely this until February?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. You abstained, did you vote yes? Member Johnston? I didn't hear you. Did you vote yes? Okay, thank you. So, passes unanimously.
Just taking notes. All right, so that moves us past the policies and regulations portion. Moving on to contracts, change orders, and leases. There were no items discussed there. Then we move on to acceptance of donations. So page 31. I move Resolution B-12-17-3502, acceptance of donations to the Duluth Public Schools, whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 requires the school district to accept donations by resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donors in full, and whereas acceptance of the donations in accordance with the donors' terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools, now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public School does accept the below described donation from said organization in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to those various individuals and organizations. So, number of donations to ALC and Denfeld and East with a number of different pieces. Things like gym equipment, the 5th grade field trip, a hurricane fund for Puerto Rico, classroom use for a parent group in Stowe. So, I move that motion.
Is there a second? Seconded by Member Sandstead. Any discussion? All in favor of Resolution B-12-17-3502, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This passes unanimously.
I move on to Resolution B-12-17-3503, Certified Tax Levy 2017 payable 2018. Be it resolved by the Duluth School Board of Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, to hereby set the tax levy for the 2017 payable 2018 at $31,697,855.86. And so I move that resolution.
Is there a second? Second. It's It's been moved and seconded by Member
Sandsted.
Sandsted. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor of Resolution B12-173503, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Next, moving on to Resolution B-12-17-3504, combining of polling places and establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designated hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of the statewide election. So be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709, State of Minnesota, as follows. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Sections 205A11, the precincts and polling places for school district elections are those precincts or parts of precincts located within the boundaries of the school district which have been established by cities or towns located in whole or in part within the school district. The Board hereby confirms these precincts and polling places so established by those municipalities. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 205A.11, the Board may establish a combined polling place for several precincts for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election. Each combined polling place must be a polling place that has been designated by a county or municipality. The following combined polling places are established to serve precincts specified for all school district special and general elections not held on the same day as a statewide election. So then I'm going to skip the sections that actually focus.
Maybe.
They're unnamed. Yeah. So then down to item 3, pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 205A.09, the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the same day as a statewide election between the hours of 7 o'clock a.m. and 7 o'clock p.m. 8 o'clock p.m., thank you. The clerk is directed to file a certified copy of this resolution with the county auditors of each of the counties in which the school district is located, in whole or in part, within 30 days after its adoption. As required by Minnesota Statute, Section 204B.16, Subdivision 1A, the clerk is hereby authorized and directed to give written notice of new polling place locations to each affected household with at least one registered voter in the school district whose school district polling place location has been changed. The notice must be a non-forwardable notice mailed at least 25 days before the date of the first election to which it will apply, and a notice that is returned as undeliverable must be forwarded immediately to the appropriate county auditor, who shall change the registrant's status to challenged in the statewide registration system. So I move B-12-17-3504.
It's been moved and seconded by Member Sandsted. Any discussion on this? Mr. Hassler.
I'd like to address some of where this comes from. This is part of legislation that would require annual action, annual approval of a resolution by our board to accomplish this. We do not have board elections on the calendar for next year. In the event there would be a special school board election, this resolution would come into play. I'm not predicting that. I'm not anticipating it. But I would suggest that this is a process, this is a resolution we would like to address with the board annually. And if it's not already obvious, I would like to touch upon, we have significant responsibilities related to the administration of school board elections, including bearing cost to pay for election judges, to staff polling places, a lot of responsibilities that go along with that as well. Through the consolidation or the combination of polling places as outlined in this resolution, we would save cost in any future year where we would have a school board election. But again, approving this resolution in December of this year would have effect for an election next year, which right now is not on the calendar. But I think it would be a good practice for us to have on an annual basis to come back and have a resolution like this approved, whether or not we have board elections on the calendar, so that we can get the advantage of being able to consolidate the number of polling places and limit the cost obligations that we would have associated with those.
Thank you. Member Oswald.
I have a question. Knowing that many school districts around the state choose to hold annual operating levy elections in April, is that what would be considered a special school board election if we all of a sudden decided to have an April levy election? And is that covered under this resolution?
My understanding is that this is limited to school board member elections. It's not relating to a referendum.
I wish there was wording in here that would make it clearer to that effect, because I don't read it that way. It's kind of open-ended. It just says a special school board election. So, and while you think about that, I just want to give the comment that I'm having a really hard time accepting that we're going from 39 polling places to 5. I understand the need to want to have as few as possible, but I believe having only 5 may produce a voter hindrance for certain voting populations, such as the elderly or those without transportation and those sorts of things. And so how did you arrive at where these polling places are?
This is something that we work with in looking at our maps and trying to make good judgments about distribution of polling places. The large number that we have in the at-large is encompassing our entire district, and we're just trying to make some reasonable judgments about location of polling places that would provide access, provide the opportunities for people to vote, but to do so reasonably distributed around our school district.
I apologize that we didn't get to cover this at the committee meeting because it was so long and tedious already. So I apologize for having these detailed questions, but I'm going to find it hard to accept this right now, meaning that I feel we need some changes to clarify that it's special school board election members, and I would like to investigate if we can incorporate a couple other polling places because some of these districts do have challenging topography, and we are a long but skinny city. So I would like to make a formal motion, I guess, to table this until next month. Postpone definitely, I guess that would be, yes. As we are so familiar with.
On an annual basis, so we can take more time. That would mean that any resolution we would approve would be too late to address a board member district election next year. Again, we don't have one right now. In the event that there would be a special board member election, a resolution that we pass in January, February would not have effect. It is a requirement that it be approved annually, and this is our opportunity to do that. In the judgment of the board, you can decide whether or not this is a priority for a year in which we don't have a board member election scheduled. And perhaps with more time, we could come up with something that would be more satisfactory to the board as a whole for future years where we do have scheduled elections.
Could we possibly pass it next month and then reauthorize it in 11 months rather than, holding out until?
It will be necessary to reauthorize it before the end of next year, would be the expectation.
Is that a problem?
Well, it's not a problem, except something that you would pass in January would not have any effect in 2018 in the event that we would have a special board member, special district election.
Okay.
Member Lefler-Kemp.
Am I on? I have a lot of questions and concerns about consolidating polling places for some similar reasons that Member Oswald mentioned, so I would not be comfortable passing this, and I appreciate that we do need, from reading through it, why you want us to do it. I do, from being involved with many elections and voter turnout, have concerns about consolidating it to that few of voting places. So I wouldn't support this. I would support Member Oswald's resolution.
Member Welty?
I'm in strong agreement with both Member Leffler-Kemp and Member Oswald, and I do think this is something that could be examined in the future. We have more people who are, mailing in the ballots absentee, not even bothering with elections. But I'm pretty jaded about all of the federal and state level activity to do things along these lines to discourage people from voting, especially when it is there's a great likelihood that they would not vote for the people who are making the changes. And I know that is not the intent. It seems to me that we have a price tag of about $10,000 for a special election. And should we have a special election for whatever reason next year, statutory operating debt or notwithstanding, I think keeping polling as easy and available to people is a price worth spending the bucks to make it easy for people to vote.
Member Sandsted.
Yeah, this is, I don't know where this came from, if this was a MSBA recommended policy. Okay. This is just part of the, it's 9:35 and we didn't have a chance to talk about it at committee, and it has to happen in December, and that's just not going to work for any of us at this point. And so all of that information would have been helpful in advance, but I'm just looking at the statute, and that's not very clear as to whether or not we're talking about just member elections versus levies or other things that people may vote on, either, which is not necessarily inconsistent with what the legislature does generally in terms of clarity, but it's not clear. I'm with everybody else that I'm not comfortable passing this evening.
Member Harlow.
I just want to make it clear, I agree with the comments that have been said, that when you pass it next year, that it doesn't affect the election date for the following year, because technically when we have our municipal elections and on odd years, they fall, does that count as a statewide date? So that's it. So it'll be important to make sure that what you pass in January doesn't negatively affect how you can actually poll that following for 2 years from now for that election. So just as you're looking into the detail, that you don't, that doesn't end up happening. So just a note.
Okay. Member Johnston, did you have?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to say that it seems like I agree with all the board members here on a controversial thing, and that's very happy to make that clear. I just want to reiterate again, I can't imagine why we would ever want to reduce the number of polling places. I mean, it seems really kind of wrong and very contrary to where we're going as a country by making polling and voting easier. So I'm hoping that the future board will say resoundly no to this. I want to have more than one voting spot in West Duluth.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to postpone definitely this agenda item until January board meeting. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. That is postponed definitely. You can.
Right. The last resolution is to reopen Rockridge. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, to hereby reopen the vacant Rockridge building listed at 4849 Ivanhoe Street by January 3rd, 2018. Be it further resolved that the Rockridge building will now house the Woodland Hills Academy, which will be named Rockridge Academy. And just with a note on this, Member Johnston made a good comment at the meeting about ensuring that we have the certificate of occupancy that will all be set. And thank you to David for working in a very swift and timely manner on this. So we move resolution B-12-17-3505.
It's been moved and seconded. Moved by Member Harless, seconded by Member Leffler Kemp. Any discussion about this? Seeing none, all in favor of approving resolution B-12-17-3505, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Right, moving on to placeholder for sale of property. There is nothing there. Informational items are as presented. Future items, 2018 legislative agenda and policy updates. So with that, I move my last business committee agenda item.
Thank you.
Business committee.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the business committee. Any discussion? Member Johnston.
I'd like to have a separate vote on A and also a discussion on A1A1. Did I say a separate vote on item 1? That's what I meant if I didn't say
a separate vote on item 1?
All of item 1 like I usually do, and a separate discussion on A1A1, which is the audit.
Well, we should have the discussion first since we're going to vote on the entire thing. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. We got the audit, the explanation paper from the auditor the day we were here, and we had some good discussion, but didn't have really time to look at it. And so I do have some comments that I want to talk about from that. First one is these are some things I think that the public should know about. Again, the long-term liabilities went from $375 million to $625 million, or a $250 million increase in long-term liabilities. That was predominantly increased because of long-term debt or pensions, which the school may be responsible for. And one of the reasons that went up, it wasn't just unique to our school, it was apparently happened to all the schools. Based on the TRA, which is a Teacher Retirement Association, they changed their discount rate from 8% down to 4%, which of course increased the potential liabilities of schools by $250 million in one whack. That's a lot of money. And as anybody's been following states like Illinois, pensions are a big deal, and I think this is certainly more realistic than what was there last year. It does concern me, though, that the auditor said, well, gee, we just take what they give us. I think an auditor should be, I'm looking at auditors questioning, we should have questioned the 8% discount rate last year. And incidentally, the other retirement fund, what's the name of that? PRA. That kept the discount rate at 8%, or 7.5, excuse me, instead of putting it down to 4%. So if that would have went down to 4%, we would have increased our long-term liabilities probably by another $50 million. Those are just long-term things that people should be looking at. This is not going to impact us immediately. Was a little bit surprised the auditor said we don't have to worry about it at all. I do worry about it, and I hope everybody in Duluth and everybody in the state of Minnesota worries about liabilities that are that enormous. They're really quite enormous. And the handout, this is some stuff I have had concerns. It was on page 9 in the handout. They indicated that the number of non-residents that are attending our schools was half, from about 350 down to about 175. It didn't seem like a big deal, but I thought it was very peculiar that every year for the past that was on the chart was changed. It was obviously something that was looked at. I asked the auditor, and she said, "Oh, we just got that from MDE." No, you didn't, because it passed from MDE. It hasn't changed anything. So I had a concern that the resident numbers had changed. It doesn't impact us really at all, except it does show how many people are coming from out of our district to our district versus people from our district going from to other schools, and that's always been a big concern. So that reduced the impact of that, and I'm wondering why, and I didn't think the explanation was very well. We were told also on page 15 that the general fund unassigned balance, this is technical but it's important, for 2015 was wrongly stated to be $1,696,000 when apparently it should have been $3,695,000. Okay, the auditor said it was some adjustment made. I thought audits were done to make adjustments, and an adjustment was made to the audit. Apparently, adjustment was made to the adjustment, and that's a $2 million adjustment, which should not be just said, well, gee, it was just an adjustment. And no, we were not informed about it, and I think that that we should have had a little better explanation of why there was a $2 million error by the auditor for the year 2015. Another issue which I'm again suggesting people keep an eye on is that we were told by the auditor there's an item called severance insurance premium that can be added to the unassigned general fund, and this time the auditor said at the prerogative of the administration. That's a $4 million fund, and when you take $4 million, and if we would have, say, put that on there this year, we would have had a $3 million general fund balance. So it can make a big difference. And I talked to Sarah Miller of MDE about this about a year ago, and asked her, please explain what the severance insurance premium is and why could it be added. Incidentally, a year ago, the auditor said it could be added willy-nilly. That was an exact quote from the auditor 2 years ago. Well, Sarah Miller didn't have a clue what I was talking about, and she told me to ask the CFO for an explanation. Well, I have asked the CFO, and I got no explanation, and I asked him about a year ago. I still have got no explanation, and it concerns me that nobody seems to know, but this is just at the prerogative of management that we can change our bottom line by $4 million. It's the prerogative of management. I don't think that's the prerogative of management at all, and I am very concerned about that. And another issue that I had with the auditor was she gave us the reasons for the negative general fund balance. One of them was reduction enrollment greater than expected. That is completely wrong. Last year, we had a higher number of enrollment than we budgeted for. It was just the opposite of what they stated. And that was completely wrong. I expect an auditor to be a little more accurate than that. And that it was not a reason for the budget deficit we had, according to the audit, which was last year. And again, we were also told that it was due to special ed funding. I disagree with that. I won't belabor that point anymore. But again, I want to emphasize that this budget crisis is not just a slice of time, and we would have done it a day later, it would have been different. No, that's completely false. Again, back in 2010, we had a $20 million general fund balance. Today we have zero. And again, I'll say the same thing I said earlier. We should have been making a plan to remedy the basic budget issues that we have known about for 8 years. Instead, we have done nothing. We're in this position now because of basic financial incompetence by this administration. And even Moody said, where is your plan to fix some of this stuff? Other board members have said, where is the plan? We've been saying this for 8 years, the plan hasn't happened. And I think this is a crisis. The administration is responsible for fixing this. And as a citizen in the future, I will be holding them responsible for that. And I'm hoping that they don't just say, let's just raise taxes to fix it. Because I would like to have, as a citizen, have competent financial management in this district. And at this point, we do not have that.
All right. You also asked for a vote on item 1, separate vote for the financial report. Do you want a second for that?
He doesn't need a second.
You don't need a second? You can have a separate. Let's have that vote first then. Briefly.
Yeah, again, I've been voting. I used to always vote against this in the past. I was voting for it. And again, I'm voting against it. I'm hoping that, particularly considering the dire financial straits that we found out about a week ago, I think it shows that we should not be voting for the financial report and giving that a vote of confidence. It's there. By voting for it, it's a good token by saying no. We can do better, and we expect management to do better, and that's why I'm voting against it.
All right. All in favor then of accepting the financial report as presented to us by Whitley on December 11th, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So it passes 6-1 with Member Johnston voting no.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
Was that all of 1A1, or all of item 1?
That was item 1, all of item 1, financial report. All right. And now we vote on the rest of the business committee report. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of accepting the remainder of the business committee report that we haven't voted on already, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 6-0 or 7-0. All right.
We have other resolutions.
Now we have special resolutions that are on page.
Special resolution. There's one.
Just says special resolution, be page 73. Right. Member Sandsted, could you read the first one for me, please?
Resolved that Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, pay costs incurred as per district policy for new school board members to attend the Minnesota School Boards Association Phase 1 and 2 orientation workshops held in December 2017 and January 2018. I move Resolution SP 1217-3498.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in. Member Welty.
Seeing as we have all the new school board members here, I will just simply say I've never missed an MSBA conference until a couple of, I think, Alana's first one. But these are marvelous occasions to meet with school board members, and they're eye-opening, and it's nice to rub elbows with people who can give you a lot of guidance and explain what they've lived through, and sometimes it's good to be able to see with a lens other than just the one that you get here in Duluth.
I think that's the next resolution, but this is for the Phase 1 and 2 orientation workshops.
Well, that'd be good too.
Okay. All right. All in favor of Resolution SP 1217-3498, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So it passes 7-0. Member Hartlow, maybe you can read Resolution.
I move Resolution SP-12-17-3499 Board member attendance at 2018 MSBA Leadership Conference. Resolved that Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, pay costs incurred as per district policy for school board members to attend the Minnesota School Board Association 2018 Leadership Conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota on January 10 through 12, 2018. So I move this resolution.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Member Welty, you just discussed this.
What I just said, only for the wrong resolution, still goes.
Thank you. All in favor of this resolution say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Member Leffler-Kemp, can you...
Two resolutions to fully fund special education services. One is a resolution for Minnesota and one is for the federal level. And Member Welty and I attended the Minnesota School Board Association Delegate Assembly a couple weeks back with about 120 other school board members statewide. We were asked to bring these resolutions to each of our boards as funding special education is a concern of districts across the state, as we've heard a lot of discussion around special education tonight as it impacts our district. So we want to bring these resolutions forward to show the support from our district collectively with the districts across the state. I'm going to read the first resolution and ask to have it passed, moved and passed, and then the second resolution, I won't read all of it because it's the same except for the last, be it resolved. So resolution, it's the last two resolutions in our board book. I move SP 1217-3500, resolution to fully fund special education services in Minnesota, whereas local boards of education place a high priority on ensuring that all students receive high-quality special education programs and instruction, and whereas in 1975 Congress enacted the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, now known as the Individuals with Disability Act, IDEA, to improve access to education for children with disabilities by guaranteeing a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment, assure that the rights of children with disabilities and their parents are protected, assist states and school systems to provide for the education of all children with disabilities, and to assess and assure the effectiveness of efforts to educate all children with disabilities. And whereas when IDEA became law in 1975, the federal government promised to fund 40% of the additional cost of educating children with disabilities. And yet the federal government has failed to adequately fund the mandated programs and services arising under IDEA, never providing more than 15% of the additional cost. And whereas sufficient federal funding for IDEA would significantly enhance the ability of local school systems to provide an excellent education for all students, and whereas the special education cross-subsidy continues to be a major obstacle for Minnesota school districts to grapple with due to the growing number of students receiving special education, more specialized services, and rising costs associated with those services and inadequate funding. And whereas the state special education funding system has not kept pace with the rising cost of mandated services and supports for students with special needs. And whereas the cross-subsidy for school districts FY 2016 is $679 million, a 5.6% increase from FY 2015. And whereas between rising need and insufficient state and federal aid, the amount of funding school districts as a whole in Minnesota will be forced to pay for special education costs will reach an average of $815 per student in FY17. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we urge the governor and the legislature to strenuously advocate for significant increases in federal special education funding and meaningful special education reforms at the federal and state levels. And now, therefore, it be resolved that there is an urgency for the Minnesota legislature to convene a task force to work on special education funding, specifically with the focus on the impacts of the new special education funding formulas, the projected cross-subsidy, and recommendations with a timeline to eliminate the cross-subsidy.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Seconded by Member Welty. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of resolution. Member Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. Just a couple quick things. And again, I don't really like the way this is worded. I'm going to vote for it, but I do think that it's going into this whole blaming the special ed kids for what's going on. I do want to emphasize making sure that people know that a cross-subsidy has nothing to do with charter schools. It has to do with what we do internally. And we all know, I forget what the cross-subsidy is for our schools, it's a lot. That means that for every special ed kid, it costs more to provide those services, and we get from the state and feds, as this resolution states. And just as a footnote to that everybody loses money on special ed, us, the public school, as well as Edison. And if we take over Edison schools, I mean, say if they didn't have their special ed kids, we would be losing more money on them as well. So we have to be careful when we start blaming Edison. And again, just one footnote to this.
Member Welty.
Yes, a little additional background on the issue of cross-subsidy. We, as a school board, had a legislative platform asking that the state end the cross-subsidy, and that was presented to the Minnesota School Board Association Legislative Assembly that Member Leffler-Kemp and I attended, and the MSBA staff recommended against it in favor of a motion asking that there be a legislative task force to study the issue. They've taken a slightly more forceful set of wording here, which I agree with. It'd be lovely to have the state and federal government fund all of our special education, because it has been a burden on virtually every school district in the United States. That's all I have to say. I think this would be a good idea if we can get somebody to do it. I'm not sure that we're living in a world in the United States today where, with all the big budget cuts, this is very likely from the existing government, so maybe that will change at some point in the near future.
Thank you. No other discussion? All in favor of Special Resolution SP 12-17-3500, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously.
And the second resolution, again, I'm not going to read, even though I think it's important information in the whereas. I'll just read the ending, which is different. I move SP 12-17-3501, resolution to fully fund special education services federal. Whereas local boards of education place a very high priority on ensuring that all students receive high-quality special education programs and instruction. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that we urge the President and the Legislature to strenuously advocate for significant increases in federal special education funding and meaningful special education reforms at the federal and state levels. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the state of Minnesota calls upon the Congress of the United States to pass appropriate legislation in order to increase funding for federal special education mandates to meet the urgent financial special education needs of our cities and towns. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Senate cause a copy of this resolution to be delivered to all United States representatives and senators representing Minnesota in the Congress of the United States.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for this resolution. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, All in favor of passing Special Resolution SP 12-17-3501, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes unanimously as well. All right. I think we've come to the end, not the bitter end, just the end. But before we adjourn, we have some gifts for the departing members. It doesn't come along with the opportunity to talk for lengthy times, however. But you could say something.
We'll let Welty go first?
Yeah.
It's been fun. It's been an honor.
I'm grateful. It's been fun. It's an honor, and I'm grateful to the public for granting me 4 more years trying to solve some of the problems for the Duluth School District. Happy New Year when it comes, everybody, and I hope it really is.
Member Johnston.
Sure, I won't do a monthly speech, but I think that everybody should run for elected office. It's a very interesting process. It's very interesting to represent people. I've been very thankful to be able to do that. I've met some amazing people, so thank all of you out there for electing me twice. And I'm going to be very glad to be doing some of my other stuff, so best of luck to everybody. I think you have challenges, but I'm hoping that you can deal with them. Thank everybody.
I'll put on your light. You get to talk too.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank our community of Duluth and our surrounding townships for the opportunity to serve you for the last 4 years. I want to especially thank my family, who's been really supportive, and my friends, especially my husband, who doesn't always get to come out to this stuff, but spent the night being a community member. And thanks for always having a glass of wine when I come home. I really appreciate and admire the amount of effort and work that goes into educating our kids every day. And this board has had a lot of tumult and frustration over the last number of years, but we also have been able to put in a lot of systems that are making a difference in our schools. We heard that last week from American Indian Education student panel or family panel. We see that every day with MTSS, and we see even though we are in frustrating pieces with our budget, kids' lives are changing every day. And so it's been an honor and a privilege to serve my community, and I look forward to being an ally to the public school system for years to come. Thank you. And I move to adjourn.
Any discussion about this? All in favor? All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
The ayes have it.